1 second, Chairman.
Are we recording now?
Yes, we're on YouTube and
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Give us 1 minute, we'll let you know. Thank you.
You're good.
You're good.
So we're back in open session. It's 6:37. I'm going to ask everybody to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and to remain standing. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing.
Since our last meeting, following Dayton residents have passed. I ask that we remember them with a moment of silence. Helen Annunziato was 85 years old from North Dayton. She was a very active member of St. Joseph and St. Nicholas Church. Ronald DaCosta was 88 of North Dayton, an Air Force veteran of the Korean War. William Welch was 63 years of age. He was a member of the U.S. Coast Guard and also served as a custodian at Dayton Rehoboth Regional High School before earning his teaching degree in several education posts in the Berkeley school system, including vice principal. And Jessie J. Rodriguez, she was 98 years old and was a seamstress most of her life. I asked them, remember them with a moment of silence. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
So as I announced earlier, this is a hybrid meeting, Zoom as well as cable. It's live on Channel 9. It will be uploaded to YouTube. And Dr. Z, who was on Zoom before when we started the meeting, is present. I asked, and all of my colleagues are present in person. So we have several appointments. The first one is Zachary Blake, Division of Local Services. Is he?
so yeah, Mr. Chairman, I believe Mr. Blake was supposed to be on Zoom. I'm actually see him listed. I did email him this afternoon. But if we want, if we want to table this for later in the meeting, we have visitors and we can move into that later.
I'll entertain a motion to table this to be heard later on in the meeting.
So moved.
Is there a second? Any discussion? If not, all those in favor, aye. Dr. Z?
Aye.
Selectman Hull?
Aye.
And Kendra Chico is also an aye. The next item, sometimes we have some, or Selectmen have to discuss some boring things from the night before I became a Selectman. I used to put the Selectmen's meetings on. I was ready to go to sleep. But this is very exciting. We have a certificate of achievement from the Board of Selectmen. Certificate of achievement. We, the undersigned, do hereby proudly present this certificate of achievement to the Dayton Rehoboth Girls Softball Team in recognition of their exceptional efforts and achievements in winning Division II state semifinals. Congratulations, you have made Dayton proud. The winners whereof we have hereunto set our hands and caused a great seal of the town of Dayton to be affixed on this 14th day of July 2021. It is signed by the Board of Selectmen of the town of Dayton, Kendra Chico, the chairman, of Selectman Hull, the clerk, and Dr. Sukankis is a member of the Board of Selectmen. So we are very proud of you. I know you didn't make it all the way, but you did great, and you really made Dayton proud. All of us have followed it, and it's always next year, but we are very pleased and happy with what you've done. Is there somebody who wishes to speak from the softball team?
Thank you.
So I would like all the members of the team to identify themselves. So that Dayton residents can, and speak loudly because the microphones are up here and the public may not see. How does everybody feel about that? I'll start with the person who's laughing.
I'm Mariana Raposo.
I'm Kylie Rudy. I'm Emily Marcotte. I'm Kaylee Quinn. I'm Corinne Braga. I'm Kylie Hillier. I'm Maddie Phillips. Grace Sullivan. I'm Morgan Corey. I'm Nicole Corey.
And any of the coaches here?
We're all here.
We're all here? Why don't we identify ourselves?
I'm Stephanie Colucci. Katie Holmes. Sarah Seaton. Danielle Holmes.
Well, we are so proud of you. I'm going to give this certificate to someone who's the treasurer. So you have a choice, you can stay for the rest of the week. We have to be out of here by 11. So, how long this week will go on. We have to be out of here by 11. But feel free to, believe, I mean, we obviously appreciate everything you've done for bringing me to go with, and we're so proud of you, and glad this was brought to our attention. So, thank you again.
Thank you. Do you want to get a picture with you?
It should come up here.
Yeah, but you still have one on this table.
Don't go this.
Excuse me.
I know.
It's about ready?
Big
Gonna give about 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Really look forward to this smile. Really look forward.
Keep shaking hands. It's not very long.
Great job.
Yes, that's literally what I
Zachary Blake isn't present yet, is he?
No, he's not.
So the next item is a proclamation for the Parks and Recreation. Whereas Park and Recreation, we have the chairman of the Parks and Recreation, Kevin Smith Jr. present. Whereas Parks and Recreation programs are an integral part of communities throughout the country, and whereas our parks and recreation are vitally important to establishing and maintaining the quality of life in our communities and contributing to the economic and environmental well-being of our community and region, and whereas Parks and Recreation programs build healthy, active communities that aid in the prevention of chronic disease, provide therapeutic recreation services for those who are mentally or physically disabled, and whereas Park and Recreation programs increase the community's economic prosperity through increased property values, and whereas Park and Recreation areas are fundamental to the environmental well-being of our community, and whereas parks and natural recreation areas improve water quality, protect groundwater, prevent flooding, improve the quality of the air, we provide vegetative buffers to development and produce habitat for wildlife. And whereas our parks and natural recreation areas ensure the ecological beauty of our community, and provide a place for children and adults to connect with nature, recreate outdoors. And whereas the town of Dayton recognizes the benefits derived from parks and recreation resources, and now therefore we, the Board of Selectmen of the town of Dayton, do hereby recognize the month of July 2021 as Park and Recreation Month, and urge all the citizens of the town of Dayton to take cognizance of this event and participate cleanly in the observance. Senator Chairman Chico, the clerk, Leonard Powell, Selectman Leonard Powell, and Selectman Dr. Zavrakis, member of the Board of Selectmen.
Mr. Chairman, I motion that we approve the Parks and Recreation Month proclamation as presented this evening.
I second.
Any discussion? I just want to say you had a great event this past Saturday. I know that you and Sue Cody worked very hard on this. I saw you early in the morning out there, you and Sue out there in the morning. You worked all day, and you were probably the last people leaving that day, but it was nice to see so much of the public come out, so many kids that were involved in different events that were going on, touch a truck and the police cruisers being the country chief for doing that. You know, all the committee and commissions from the town that were present and were willing to talk to the public about different opportunities that they may have in the town. I also want to congratulate my colleagues for participating in the dunking of the selectmen. Just want to acknowledge that they put pressure on me to participate, and I believe Dr. Z was the first one to agree to it, and then Selectman Hull was the second one to really put pressure on me, being the old man of this group that's sitting up here. I had some hesitancy, and I still have some pain and but it was a great event. And I just want to throw out my grandson, who wasn't able to get the ball at the target, but was given permission to hit the thing. He was very happy. He did apologize. I'm sorry, Grandpa. I really did. It was. So that was probably a great moment for me to have my grandson participate in that. So it was just a great event. I look forward to it happening again next year and the years to come. I just think it was a great event. Any other comments that people want to make about the? I know you two were there obviously, and you had a booth. Although there was so much stuff going on, I really wasn't at the booth for about 4 or 5 minutes. And just walking around, we were all part of different committees and different groups.
A couple of residents did come up to me to talk about just like different things going on in town and share ideas, thoughts. One resident had a concern regarding like a zoning issue, regarding a proposed business zone. It was just really nice.
I spoke to that same person.
Mm-hmm.
She was very articulate, and she knows what she's talking about.
Absolutely.
It was nice to speak with me.
I'd also like to commend your colleague, Sue Cody, for her efforts. I had a meeting earlier in the day. I saw her there early in the morning, and I know you and her were still putting away things when I left. It was about 7:30 at night, so Park and Rec did the town very, very well. I thank you. Please pass that on.
And I know you've only been a member now, the chairman of the Parks and Recreation for about 3 months. You're doing a great job.
Thank you very much.
So I think we have the motion in a second on the proclamation. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Do we hang on to this proclamation? Do we give it to the chairman of the Parks and Recreation?
Yep, I can take a copy of it, but I think we can give it to you.
Later on, yeah. You're gonna. Thank you. And well, we have Kevin Smith here. He's also the Spotlight Committee that we've been talking about at this meeting is the Open Space Committee. And Kevin Smith is a member of that committee. So can you let the public what it's about and whether or not you need any more meetings? You can come up to
Good evening, everybody. So I'm here to talk about spotlighting the Open Space Committee. The Open Space Committee was put together to come up with an open space plan for the town. I did come into the committee kind of late in the planning process, but I did help bring it home. Dr. Z is is the liaison to the board, so he's familiar with some of the work we've done. Part of our work was coming up with an open space plan for the town, which we submitted to the town in March, and has since been passed on to the Mass Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs and the Division of Conservation Services, and it was approved by both. So what that does is it opens up opportunities for grants and improvements, land acquisitions, and projects that we can do as it pertains to the open space plan. A large part of that plan was thanks to Bill Napolitano from the Southeastern Regional Planning and Economic Development District. And that allows for involvements for projects which was just spotlighted by the Taunton Gazette, like the Taunton River Trail, which would link Taunton to Somerset by way of Dayton by utilizing unused trail beds, parklands, and streets. That project was also recently backed by State Rep Jake Hockenhuss, which is good to see that the state is willing to fund these projects that these towns are very interested in. It kind of comes at a good time because I think we have a good collaboration between where we're at moving forward with open space, the Trails Committee, and Parks and Rec, so we forged a good relationship of communication, where hopefully in the near future we can see that project start to progress for our town. Another large part of the Open Space Committee is a residential design bylaw, which would promote natural land preservation based on environmental and social priorities. A big part of that would help us moving forward as a town to have specific guidelines when developers come to our town with proposals. So moving forward in our upcoming meetings, we're going to be concentrating on the residential design bylaw. This committee meets the third Monday of every month, and our next meeting will be the third Monday in August. And we are currently seeking new members if anybody is interested. So if anybody is passionate about this, the work that this committee does, we'd love to hear from you, and we can all work together to bring some of these plans that we've already started to life.
How many members is this committee supposed to? Sorry.
No, that's okay.
It's supposed to have.
5, I believe.
I believe, yeah, it's 5.
So we like I should say we because I'm the liaison, but we barely have a quorum right now. So if anyone is sick or whatever, gets a cold, can't make it, we can't have.
We currently have 3, because unfortunately we lost the chair, Ellen Bidlack, who moved out of town. Additional members would be hugely helpful, because if we can't meet our quorum, then we can't really get any work done.
And it's a volunteer form on our website if people are interested in doing this. Just let them know.
I have a couple of questions in regards to how open space works. I understand you identify lands, but what are the funding sources for what you attempt to do? Do you help to bring in the funding for that, or do you just come up with the ideas and pursue it and then hand it to the Board of Selectmen?
So the very first thing that we had to do, so Kevin and I actually joined around the same time, and it was to get the open space and recreation plan done. And in terms of like what we do in terms of the actual open space parcels and things like that, we really don't do anything. We serve as almost like a conduit with relevant key stakeholders, like you said, planning, trails, land use, conservation, having conversations with them, CPC, absolutely. Having conversations with them and looking at maps and saying, what parcels may be advantageous to the town, which ones should we keep? Which ones should we try acquiring? Which ones, don't we need anymore? And now we can get rid of and get them off the tax rolls. But the cool thing with the open space plan, to get to your point, and I'm sorry for being long-winded, is it allows us to be eligible, now that it has been accepted, as Mr. Smith had alluded to, for land use grants, conservation grants. And we had a conversation recently together about why that was advantageous to us, because now we can pull all stakeholders together and have discussions about what grants may be good and why. What parcels of land, what monies we could obtain to obtain a new parcel of land that may fit into what we're trying to do with open space and recreational spaces in a certain part of town. So it just opens up new funding sources, to answer your question. Yeah.
Now,
Can I add to that just real quick?
I'm sorry?
Can I add to that real quick, just to give, for instance, is we actually, so a grant, we're gonna just miss it this year, but it's a yearly grant, that focuses on waterfront park properties. So like, for instance, like Tricentennial Park would be a good spot to look into using that grant money, but one of the requirements of being eligible for that grant is having an approved open space plan. So, and without this committee, that plan wouldn't have been put together, so.
Do we have another question? Mr. Smith, if someone in the town wanted to bequeath through a will or donate to cut their taxes, who would they contact? The chairman of open space or?
I know, I'm like, we've never been that lucky except for, yeah, exactly. Well, he just donated
Yeah.
money, not
Well,
even land.
we also got some other donation, Mrs. Goulart's donation.
Yes,
On Main Street.
hello.
What I would add, we have been very fortunate to acquire land for open space with funding from various sources other than grants. The land we bought on Brook Street, the western half of the Segregated River and the frontage, that was CPC money. The land right next door, immediately north of our north driveway, again, we bought it, open space, recreation, there may be other uses for it. We got money for that, again, locally. I was approached at the event on Saturday by a woman who owns property that she wants to donate to the town, but she does not want it to be built on. And from what she described to me, I told her to get in touch with the Conservation Commission, because if the Conservation Commission gets land, it will have that restriction on it. And also, the Conservation Commission has funds available to buy land, so it would be up to her to talk to them. But her main point was, I got this land, I have no, it sounded like relatives, and she doesn't want it to end up being developed, so I suggested she do that. But the other thing too is, as the Board of Selectmen, we are in negotiations, no secret on this one, for 3 lots of land on Main Street with AstraZeneca. And if we get that, that will make a connection between all of the land from Brook Street down to Council Oak, and it will connect up to Council Oak to Main Street, so that you can actually walk that distance. Again, the approach to AstraZeneca is open space and recreation. And basically, that's the only reason they would give it to us, because they don't want anything done to it, no development, building, whatever. And then we've also been discussing with the townspeople. We are still talking about the potential of accepting the piece of land from AstraZeneca that contains the pond and the dam. But we're working, trying to determine if we can get grant funding to have a thorough engineering study of the dam done. They're willing to give it to us. Obviously, we need to know what it's going to take to bring that dam up to the next level, and ongoing maintenance costs. And part of the discussion with AstraZeneca has been, if you want us to take it, and we agree to take it, you'll need to have to give us money to help maintain it. So they haven't said no to anything. So we're still working on all of those. So that's another way we acquire properties that can be for recreation and open space.
Right, and I think the open space committee is more of a liaison for, passing those relationships around or informing, another committee or commission that there are grants available that might help with that. As far as like land acquisition, we would probably look at the piece of land and give our opinion or recommendation on whether or not that land was useful as it pertains to our open space plans. But beyond beyond that, that would be
And
outside of our
we've got to remember, we have the Trails Committee. So obviously, if we get those 3 lots from AstraZeneca, we know there's a good long distance, roughly, Mr. Ferry said it's at least a mile. We don't do trails, but we have a committee that does, so if we can get there's an assignment for them.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Goulart.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mrs. Smith? If not, good work. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And again, congratulations on your first firecracker.
Thank you very much. Thank you for participating.
Absolutely.
Have a good night.
Me too.
The next scheduled appointment is Jeff Cronin on the Board of Media replacements. Want to update the board on what's going on with these?
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. Thank you. Thanks for having me. Here to speak about an issue we've had with several of our water meters. Say around 8 years ago, a meter company was selected to, the Dayton Water District selected the meter company for us to use for our metering. It worked very well for about 8 years. And in January, there was a Y2K issue, one of those, remember they talked about that happening back when the dates changed, or a date change, and it corrupted the meter. It didn't. So when I talk about a meter, you have your water connection in your house where the shut-off is, that's, we call that the dump. Actually, the part of the water goes through, and has a register on top which calculates the reading. And attached to that is a wire, usually hangs up in your use. That is the AMR, that sends us a reading as we drive by. That's the electronic part. That is the part that, what did I say, corrupted. We've been working with the company January to fix this. We were told several times it was going to be fixed. They tried to fix, actually made a few worse. So we now have approximately 1,000 meters that are not reading in time. It's a significant amount of meters. The first plan of action was to, I mean, we have to do this fairly quick. We just sent out our bills yesterday, and 1,000 meters were estimated. That's not good. So we have to get into 1,000 meters in a relatively short period of time. In negotiating with the meter company, they will help us now. It took a lot of painful negotiating, but they're willing to help us with their expertise. They happen to fix now is we have to get in the homes, physically get at the meter and reprogram it. Can't do it from outside. So in the bills we recently sent out, we sent a letter stating the issue. We want to come in. We need to make, the company's willing to help us, but we need to make at least 100 appointments and have them scheduled for them to send a crew up there from Texas. So this is, logistically, it's very difficult, but it's going to save us hundreds of thousands of dollars. So it's one of those, we need the cooperation from the public, or it's going to cost essentially them hundreds of thousands of dollars, because the warranty does not state, no one's meter warranty is going to state that they're going to help us with their activities. So we kind of got lucky on that end. So them working with us will save us hundreds of thousands of dollars. It is going to be in there. It is a meter change. It's not. It's 15 minutes of your time, of the residents' time, and but making the appointments, blocking them off, having 100 made for them to come down, at least 100. Hopefully we have more. We'll have 3 crews out there. It will be a representative of their company, us. We'll have one of our employees with them. So hopefully we can have 3 of them, 3 of us, all going together, running around town. But a nightmare is making appointments, but we have to get this done. Or the next round of estimates. We estimated the bill at this point, according to the last few bills. I can't do that forever, because if you give somebody a bill and it's lower than what it's actually on the meter, because the meter is still reading, it's just not sending it to us, then we have to come back and give you a new gross bill. And that's not what I want to do. So that's, in essence, when somebody's meter doesn't read, the correct thing to do is to overestimate it, because then you get a phone call. Oh my goodness, my bill is $500. Oh yeah, obviously, something's wrong. We get a call, we get in, we fix it, no it isn't. We just need to do it. So, at this point, that is the next option. Other options aren't as friendly, but this is, we have to get this done. It's unfortunate, we didn't make a meter, so, going forward, we have to look at what we need to do. But right now, we gotta get it home. So,
That's terrible news. So
yeah.
what, the notice that was sent to the residents, what does it say? Does it give a number to call?
It does, I should have brought them with me, I know. If it gives a notice, a number to call, hopefully. We're gonna stop this around August 2nd. So, because that's how they want to coordinate everything. And so August 2nd seems to be when we want to stop this, when they want to stop it. We can work anyone's hours, we'll, you know, whatever it is, we'll get it done. The letter pretty much speaks to what I'm speaking to now.
It's very important that the public will get these letters, do respond, and set up an appointment, because otherwise their bill is going to be more, could be more, or whatever. You know, and everybody wants to pay the correct amount.
We don't
Nobody
want
wants
to-
to pay it, but everybody wants to pay the correct amount.
We don't want this to linger.
Right.
It's, we don't want it to linger. And we do have approximately 450 homes that haven't changed their meters, and that is going to be another project that we have to get at. So we have AMR regimes, which for the most part have been tried and true. All right, we won't go there. We can drive this town with meters in 1 day. Whereas we have around 450 customers in town that haven't had their meters changed, so we have to weeks. So financially, that is a burden on, it costs money for us, you the employees, it costs money. So eventually we have to get them all changed so we can leave this town in 1 day. And save residents money. But that's another project for another time, we have a million going on. So, a lot of files, right?
So those that don't have, I happen to have the newer meter, but
Yes.
those that don't have it, you have to physically go in the house and look.
We
at
have
the
to,
meter.
there's something attached to the side of the house to connect to. And that is such old technology that the actual gun, we call it a gun.
Yeah.
Not like the cheap gun. The gun that goes into the unit on the side of the home, they don't make it anymore. If that breaks, like we get subs that might have one, they use ours, and it's like, they're not around.
Yeah.
So it's coming to the point where we need to get into the, we're not even in the 20th century at this point, I think we're in the 19th century.
So you gotta deal with the immediate issue right now.
We do. This is the pressing issue. Saving everyone money is hopefully the goal, but expediency is very important as well. This project's going on. And we don't want to estimate 1,000 bills out. There's a nightmare.
I would just encourage the public to, if you get this letter, to respond to and set the appointment to make it easier for yourself as well as the water department. And the bills will be more accurate.
I was just wondering, do you have a follow-up plan for those homes that you don't get calls?
Yes, we will receive, I know we'll receive several calls. It will be very well received, I'm pretty sure. We'll have to explain it, but most people will be pretty well. The ones that don't, unfortunately, there is bylaws in we have bylaws in our rules and regs that do state we can shut you off for a non-allowed person change. We haven't gone there, but it is in there. It needs to be in there. It's kind of an important thing. The meter is our cash register. Essentially, it is, if you have a meter, that's 50 years old, is under reading. They need to be changed approximately every 15 years. So if someone doesn't allow us to change it, we'll settle our out there. 450 left. You gotta have this stuff in your time, everyone. So eventually, and we don't want it to come to that, but I don't want it. This is our, it's our issue, we want to fix it. It's work with us.
Any questions from the board?
Couldn't come at a worse time. All right?
Good job.
Thank you, appreciate it, thanks a lot. I'll bring the chief with me.
So the next scheduled appointment is the police chief recommendation to hire Alyssa Bennett as a full-time officer. If you don't mind, I'll read the letter that you sent to us, is that okay?
So I can read it, whatever you want to do. How you read it.
Fine, it's your letter, I'm willing to read it.
Okay. Doesn't matter.
All right, let's have it.
Well, good evening, everybody. First of all, I just want to make a comment about this weekend, that event that Kevin Smith did. I was there and it was a great thing. A lot of kids there. A lot of people come up to me saying how he did a great job and how it was a great thing to do, and hoping that it's an every year thing, and I think he did it. As far as I want to say, he did a good job.
And given that we're getting towards the end of the pandemic, hopefully getting towards the end, it was nice to see everybody be able to come out and see each other. We've been locked in our houses for a year and a half.
Sure.
Are you gonna apprise the board of our conversation where you volunteered to do the dunk tank for us next year?
I will do it if someone needs to do it. I will volunteer my services. I will go out there.
Is that in lieu of one of us?
Correct me.
I don't know, the water was a little cold then, I don't know.
That was warm.
Tommy kept the water up for
Yeah.
a week, so.
I was wondering if the water was warm there or cold.
It wasn't that bad at all.
So anyways, I'm here tonight to make a recommendation for a full-time police officer for the department. With approval of an additional police officer position in our current FY '22 year budget, myself and Sergeant Cronin revisited the testing and an interview procedure already conducted last spring, and have selected a candidate for conditional employment this time. A background check on this candidate was performed by Detective Richards. After compiling all the data, it is recommended that the following candidate be considered as a conditional employment full-time police officer, Alyssa Bennett. Let me talk about Alyssa Bennett a little bit. I don't know if you guys saw her application. She's well qualified. She actually is a full-time police officer in another town right now. She's gonna make a lateral. She found interest in the Dayton Police Department. She took the exam back in February and it was very interesting coming here. She attended the full-time Cape Cod Police Academy back last July with the department she was with. And so she's been on there a year. So I'm requesting if we can make a conditional employment with her after she completes her, of course, the PAT test she has to do, the physical, and the psych test. After that, we can get it going right away. I'm looking if we can start her August 8th, the week of August 8th. That date, I'd like to start her then.
Does the board have any questions? Not, I'll entertain a motion.
I do have one question, if there's, oh, sorry.
No.
Okay. If the board appoints Alyssa Bennett as a full-time police officer with Dayton Police Department, she would be the second current female officer in the department, correct?
Yes. Right now, if she starts the 8th, she will, start right away. You remember the last one, I came in the recommendations I made for the officer, one was the girl, and will be attending the Plymouth Police Academy in September. So she'll be going there, she'll start there. Mr. Hathaway, Truman Hathaway is already in and started with us. He's doing a great job.
I saw him at the.
He's a good fit, he's done fantastic. So this girl would come in and then the other one was in September.
Nice.
And it will also, just to let you know, we are in training now with a female officer now with us. She's gonna be the reserve, she's training now, and she's doing really well. So it's going good right now, so.
Entertain a motion then.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to appoint Alyssa Bennett as a provisional full-time officer to begin work as of August 8, 2021.
Give me a second.
I am gonna second it, but in the actual motion, do we need to make any mention of what the condition is of the appointment?
That's why I said provisional. Isn't that?
Which is the physical and.
Once she completes those, then you can appoint her as the officer.
I just want it meant, like, so we all understand that this is pending those provisions. I will second that.
Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
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 Aye, and I did just want to thank you, Chief, for, I know we just actually passed the first of July, so the fiscal year just started, and I really appreciate you making this a priority, and I think it will be helpful to the department, so thank you.
Some other things that I'll be back on to, and hopefully soon that's gonna come down too, so I know it will. I'll be back for something else.
So we can't get rid of you.
No, I want to thank the board for the support, and also TA Mike Mullin too, for the support.
Well, you're doing a great job, so.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
We're proud of the police department.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night, Chief.
The next agenda item is public input, and I'm going to let Mrs. Goldberg, she's going to give us an update on the MMA.
It's nice to see you again.
It's not insanity.
Is that too many times in 1 week now?
Yes. There's a quota, that was my small letter up there.
If you were still a member of the board, you would have been in the tank.
Yeah, you really.
I got this for you.
We would have had to call on the chief.
Just throw me in.
Exactly.
You wouldn't have needed the chief, there'd been a whole bunch of people. The last few MMA meetings, I have been really dealing with lots of legislation. And trustees of the reservation have filed a legislation that relates to coastal buyback bills. The intent of the legislation is to purchase property in flood zones. And if there are structures on those properties, is to remove them so that, I know Mr. Aguirre has talked about that because obviously we have a waterfront and we have concerns about flooding. But this legislation is in the very early stages, and it's been sent to Senator Mark Pacheco and Representative Pete. We don't have an update on that one. Representative Dykma and Senator Rauch had spoken to us earlier about the Clean Energy Act, and which is transition to 100% clean energy. You can say that's going to take a while. Senate Bill 1923, Senator Cream, and House Bill 3032, Representative Ehrlich. This is municipal reforestation program. And I had gotten something on that and I sent it out to a number of people. And the thing with the Reforestation Act, there was some mention today because I'll come back to that when I talk about the HERO bill. There's a lot of diverse opinions. It sounds good, reforestation, let's do it, but there's some caveats involved. There was a presentation on proposed legislation to expand Clean Water Act. It was interesting that Jen Peterson, who is the representative from Mass Waterworks, came out in strong opposition to it. And she said that the organization is not opposed to water resiliency, but all public water systems should have the ability to sell water. And that a drought management plan should be part of the vulnerability planning. She referenced chapter 30, section 61. This really got a little heated because water is water, whether it's drinking water, wastewater, stormwater. It's all going to end up in the same place, and hopefully it's going to come back as clean drinking water. But the the discussion of limiting the use of water, this has been around and it's come to MMA a number of times, even to legislation that would, I don't know how you enforce this one, limiting the number of gallons per person per day that you would be allowed to use, so that everyone will have a supply of water. That one came back again, this goes back years and years, and I really don't know how you would attempt to enforce that. On either side of us, we have time, Somerset, they have plenty of water. However, Dayton is looking for water or has an ability to, we need to expand processing, so forth and so on. So the thought that you would tell individuals how much water they could use per day, again, I don't know how you would enforce it, but as it turned out, there was so much, I'll say, discussion on this one that MMA decided not to take a stand on it. They're just stepping back because I don't think there's any right answer, and what was proposed in the legislation is going to create more problems than solve. The PFAS in water, that's those chemicals that you can't get rid of no matter what you do. That legislation is looking at being revised again, and there is a study committee that's been appointed to try to come up with some recommendations. But the fact of the matter is, it's everywhere. It costs a fortune to remove it. And again, this is another situation that there's no simple solution. And we're talking parts per trillion. And there seems to be a discrepancy between what the federal requirements are, or their rating of parts per trillion, and what the state says. So it's kind of difficult for communities to determine what number is the right number. Solid waste. Jeff Beckwith did send a letter in support of recycling, strongly urging the legislature to support recycling of mattresses, paint, and electronics, to ban plastic bags in all forms, and to institute a small fee per bag on paper bags. My personal opinion is the cost of doing business should include the cost of paper bags, just like they used to before we had those plastic bags. The HERO bill, the intent of it, Senator Jamie Eldridge is his call, presented this. It's Senate 1853 and House 2890, an act providing for climate change adaptation, infrastructure, and affordable housing investments in the Commonwealth. It was called the HERO bill. The first issue that was raised was they gave us a sample of what kind of charges would be assessed to communities in order to fund this. And they're also talking about doubling the fees for when you purchase a house, the fees you pay to the local registry of deeds. Now, I was concerned because some of that money is for CPC, but the proposal is to double it and use some of the money for this program. Well, the first thing that caused a stir was all counties, with the exception of Barnstable County, would be assessed $2 per 500 on the cost, and it just keeps going on and on and on. When it was questioned by the representative who was president of the Marlborough City Council, why is Barnstable different? Well, their fees are a little higher. And the basic comment was, if we're going to do this across the state, everyone should be assessed at the same rates. And one particular county should not be singled out. Because as we all know, basically Barnstable is the Cape. There's a whole different, I'll call them, set of valuations when you think about property on the Cape, okay? And a lot of it is not prime residential, it's vacation homes and things like that. So if you're going to be giving breaks, why would you give it to a community that has a very large non-residential population? So, and I agree with Mike. I said, I agree, it should be across the board. if, if we're going to do this. Getting back to that reforestation thing, there were comments made about developing land for low-income housing, affordable housing, so forth and so on. We talked about, somebody brought up solar farms, and look what they're doing to our lands, and we're talking reforestation over here, and we're talking about taxes here, and raising fees, and doubling registry fees. I said to them, I understand all of this, but I've heard complaints in our own community. People are not happy with the number of solar farms that are proposed. But quite frankly, land on which solar farms are built will eventually be returned to their original use. At least in our town, the equipment will be removed. I don't know if the plan is to replant trees again, but that land will be available for something. By the same token, in this community, we're facing potentially 3 large housing projects that would altogether exceed well over 300 homes, which would have a serious effect on services in the town, our schools, whereas solar farms, once they're built and during construction, costs that are connected to that are covered by the developer. And once they're up and running, obviously, they would have police and fire protection, but I would think the necessary, the call for those services to be rendered are going to be few and far between. So we did have a special meeting. That one resulted in the letter that Jeff sent about solid waste. We may have another special meeting. We will definitely have an August meeting. Normally, we take July and August off, but because there's so much legislation pending, and a number of groups are looking for us to weigh in on it. And at this point in time, the only one that MMA has taken a position on is the solid waste, because we're all inundated with it and the costs just keep going up and up and up. And I've mentioned to you a number of times, the state is still going to say you can't bring mattresses to the landfills. And so part of that bill also is that the manufacturer of the products that are causing problems, like mattresses, are going to have to take responsibility for the production, and they're going to have to step up and either contribute money to some kind of a fund or reimburse communities on a per unit basis for disposing of mattresses and things of that type that are, the state is saying you can't put them in a landfill or you can't dispose of them. And right now, we don't have disposal facilities around here. So anyhow, that was pretty much everything that's going on. Like I say, a lot of legislation. They talked about the bottle bill. MMA has not taken a stand on that one yet. But I gotta tell you, I heard the presentation again, and I thought, well, I guess I'm gonna have to write a letter as a citizen, not as an official from the town of Dayton. The last time it came up, the reason I really opposed the bottle bill was because they were going to include plastic bottles like you have there, nickel on every one of them. And they were also going to go into the beverage aisles in supermarkets. And by beverage aisles, I mean juice. They already have deposits on carbonated beverages and all of that. But the proposal back then was, the orange juice in bottles and the cranberry juice, you name it. And my position was, first of all, I don't think that we should pay a deposit on those bottles because number one, that's not what I'm seeing laying out there. It's nip bottles, which we all have said. Number two, I think with the advent of those plastic bottles, more people are drinking water because it's convenient to have that, and not everybody's carrying the ones you can refill and recycle. But I think the thing that was most detrimental at that time was the state predicted they would have $20 million in income from unclaimed bottle deposits. Well, if you're trying to increase recycling, didn't you just tell me the program's a flop? It's not supposed to be a moneymaker. So I did write to the Gazette, and it was, the article was titled something like the Bottle Bill Boondoggle. And I prefaced it with that I was writing as a resident, not as a member of any board, committee, or representative of the town. I got some hateful telephone calls, but that's all right. But the latest presentation now is, again, we're going back to the grocery store. The cost is 10 cents a bottle, including the water bottle. But we're going to go and look at, I call them food containers, because juice is considered a food product, up to a liter or more, and I'm thinking, that's a big bottle. And we are not seeing those along the road or in the gutter or anywhere else. But the payoff to this one is, at 10 cents a pop, they anticipate over $50 million in revenue from uncollected deposits. So you see where I'm coming from. And when we discussed it, I said to him, this has not improved anything. The last time we had a presentation about the bottle bill, we talked about nips. I said, oh, I'll support a deposit on those, because they're everywhere. And even the city of Boston that cleans their streets twice a week, minimum. They can sweep it tonight, and if I get off the train tomorrow and walk up to where MMA used to be, they're gonna be laying in the gutter. And we all know that they're everywhere in our community. So MMA has not taken a position. I may be the only no vote on the committee, but based on what I'm hearing, I'm voting no, because it makes no sense. It's not supposed to be a moneymaker for the Commonwealth. When I hear $50 million in income, that's a lot of 10 cents. That's a lot of bottles that didn't get returned. So anyhow, that's everything up to date on MMA.
Yeah, so the public knows, Mrs. Goulart, former selectman in town, our representative for Massachusetts Municipal Association, which we're all members of. So we appreciate the report. Regarding the nip bottles, I've been asked to bring it before the board to have the town of Dayton have a deposit on nip bottles, which I don't think would work because the people are going to go to other towns and just get it. I also don't think that, my personal feeling is they ought to get rid of nip bottles, period. That I don't think 5 cents on a nip bottle is going to make somebody bring it to the, they get the deposit back. They're still going to throw it on the street. When a couple of years ago, when I worked on Brook Street with Mrs. Hayes, cleaning up bottles and trash that was on the street, we collected 135 nip bottles. All of them were empty. I found a couple of water bottles that were half empty, but all the nip bottles were empty. I don't understand why they were all empty, but they were. So, and I forget what the favorite brand was, but people just, on their way to home or on their way to work, it's a shame. They drink their nip bottles and throw it on the road, so.
There is a proposal to outlaw the nip bottles, and I'm thinking, oh, that's an industry thing, they're gonna get clobbered. I agree, but there's a bigger issue. It's drinking and driving.
Yeah. Thank you.
Toss them out the window.
Not just that,
I mean,
nip bottles are out of control in the town of Dayton, and I'm sure it's not just us, but.
Everywhere.
I will say this, when we've done these, and I laugh because it's actually really sad, and I don't wanna cry about it, but I have found actually empty big wine bottles. I feel like there could be people out there that are actually not even doing the nips, that are literally drinking wine bottles in their cars while they're driving and then throwing it out. Terrifying, because they're not exercising and drinking the wine and throwing it out. They're driving. I mean, it's frightening.
It is.
It really is.
And just in closing, when I told the Ariella Lovett, who is the chair of our committee who represents MMA, that I was no longer a selectman, I says, but my elected position is an assessor. But I'm still chairman of the stormwater committee. She says, that's how we're gonna list you, because that's more related to the environmental committee, being the stormwater chairman. And I said, that's fine with me. And the other thing I want to say is, I was out here Saturday with my table and giveaways for stormwater. I had to ask Mr. Pilling to go downstairs because I ran out of bags. And I used a whole case, and I went through almost a second case. I gave away all the grippers. And as a result, I told you
All the
lots of new
grippers?
things.
There's not even one?
We're gonna re-audit grippers because they're so in demand. But the other thing too is, eventually we'll probably have to get the bags again, because so many people said, I love the
I do
bag you
like
gave
the
me,
bag.
and they wear out, because you can only, I guess if you wash them or clean them, I mean, it's not
It's
heavy,
bigger
heavy
than most
money.
that, it's wide too,
Everyone-
it's a lot in there.
Yes, and that's what, I said, well, you know, I look at that and that's what I put cereal boxes in to take to the food bank to drop off. And I can put 6 or 7 boxes of cereal in one of those Dayton bags. So eventually we're going to, I think we'll be getting more as part of our public education program. But that event was terrific. I think the turnout was remarkable. People were happy. I saw so many kids. We're gonna be looking at items that we can give out for children. All I had was some puzzles, crosswords that I got off the EPA website. But we are also gonna look into that because the kids were interested. A troop leader from Rehoboth asked me if I would be willing to come to a meeting and talk to her troop about stormwater. And I said, give me plenty of advance notice, because obviously I want to get some materials that would relate to students. My guess is these students might be late elementary, early middle school. But obviously I want to have something that they can, brochures are fine, but I would like to have something else. But it was really nice to see people interested. But again, for the first event, it was super, really, really good. So Mr. Smith did a great job in his committee too.
I was disappointed that if we already had one of those bags, that we didn't get a second bag. Carol, you remember giving me the bag, so I tried to get a second bag. You stopped.
I got a second.
But no, they're very handy, and we use ours, so that's great.
Well, rest assured, we will be getting them again. We do have what we bought this time although I didn't give many out because I wanted to use up the older materials that we had. We bought the blue clips, blue that you put on potato chips or something, and the slogan is to keep your water fresh, and that was Mr. Perry's idea, because you want to keep the food fresh, you use the clip, but it's a reminder about stormwater management and keeping, if you can, stormwater clean. And then the other thing that we have that we will be giving out, we have calendars for next year. And I've seen them, the sample came in, so I will have those for you. And we will be sure that they get out, or all of them will be, we only got 500, but they'll all be out before the end of the year. And, but I'll have those for all of you, but they're, I believe it's national parks. Down the bottom, I think it says Town of Dayton Stormwater Committee, be the solution to stormwater pollution. So we will have that going forward as part of our program.
And those grippers are very helpful,
They really
especially as you
are
get
so
older. I've had to use it a few times.
Well, young
so.
people find them useful. I'm happy to report as well. Before you go, a resident did stop me at Town Hall with a potential stormwater concern. Who knows if it's actually really something?
Is that the one you emailed to me?
No, it's a different one, but it's regarding the Brook Street project. So can I forward that along to you?
Yes.
I told them I.
As a matter of fact, we've got 2 site visits scheduled after the breakfast tomorrow, the July event. And one of them is Brook Street, they got added today. So I told Mr. Pilling, I said, yeah, absolutely, we'll go from one to the other. And but forward it anyhow, because I want to see if it's the same one I heard about, because if it's a different one, we gotta look at it while we're up there.
Awesome. I will.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, I have it here, the July 20th, the group from Canada comes out, it's 1 o'clock at Town Hall, what's the?
Yes. Yes, and as far as I know, of all the people that I contacted, Chief McGee has got, he's gonna be involved with a new fire truck. But I told him, don't worry, because if there are any questions about the culvert and your role in that, we have people who can address it, and there will, Mrs. Grassi will take notes of the site visit so that anything that is questioned or whatever, that information will be available, yeah. And everyone's welcome to go to the site visit if you choose, but if you can't, at least if you read our international guests,
I will be there.
okay?
We won't embarrass you, don't worry. I'm just kidding.
I think, again, the man I've been dealing with, Ahmed Hafez, has commended the town of Dayton because he said, we are the only community where they have a solar farm that did so much to help them with everything they ran into that weren't created by the town of Dayton. Okay, so, Mr. Hull, we're, 1 o'clock, our guests hopefully will be at town hall,
Okay.
so that it's a meet and greet, but then we're going to go to Brook Street, because he's gonna get into the nitty gritty, so, the last email I sent, the key people that I really need at Brook Street, obviously, Mr. Agia, Mr. Ferry, Mr. Pilling, as I said, Mr. Chief McGee is not gonna be available, but the whole stormwater committee, if they wanna be there, they don't have to, but my impression is that Mr. Hafez has specific questions about, probably, I'll call them construction issues and things that occurred. And Ms. Russell, she's the person I've been talking to about the pilot agreement. And as of the last conference that Mr. Mullen and I had with her, it's resolved. I'm waiting for her to send it back, because I'm gonna match it word for word with what we said the agreement is. But all of the issues, questions she raised were resolved, so I think we're all set. Would you agree?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, so I think we're all set there, which means it will be sent to you as a board for your review, and then eventually for you to vote to put it on the warrant for the next town meeting in the fall.
Thank you. Well, thank you for your work with that too.
Okay.
So we're still on the public input, I just want to give an update on COVID. As of July 11th, from June 28th to July 11th, we've got 2 new COVID cases, total of 737 cases. We have 4,042 vaccinated members in our community, that's 50%, so we're 50% vaccinated. So I just want to encourage as many people, if you're eligible, that get vaccinated to have the vaccine. It looks like most of those people that are being hospitalized are those that haven't been vaccinated. Stuff to early and something to be concerned about, so. I'm doing the good work.
Can I ask a question before? Sorry. You can go first.
Okay. How many fatalities?
That was my question.
So the whole, yeah, we haven't had any additional since March 8th. Is the last time we've had, of that week, it's the last time we had a
Does the Board of Health, they probably wouldn't know this, when we receive this information, do we get any information on like hospitalizations or anything, or just fatalities and cases?
Nothing on the,
Any in this
the
case?
report that they sent
Okay.
to me. That,
Well, it's no surprise to me because the vaccine does not prevent you from getting it, it prevents you from hopefully being hospitalized or worse. I am happy to see that there are only 2 cases. Like I said, I'm not surprised. I'm definitely going to keep my number on the fatality number and hope that the more people that get vaccinated, we don't have anyone more pass away. So I will keep my eye on that for sure.
Yeah, and people have to understand that even if you have COVID vaccinations, you wait that 2 weeks. Then 95% prevent you from getting COVID, but that's 5% that you can't. So when you see on social media that people are saying, well, so-and-so had the vaccine and then they still got it, it's still 5%. The thing is though, you're probably not gonna be hospitalized, probably not gonna die from it, you're gonna get a smaller case of it. It's those, unfortunately, those that have chosen not to get vaccinated, ones that are at risk. That's,
I do have a
that's
simple
how-
question. The Delta variant has been hitting children hard. Is he able to give us numbers by age?
Well, I can tell you that he gives me, on this list here, he gives me the age of those that have gotten COVID. So we have, for example, the one that we had this past week was somewhere between the age of 40 and 49. The week before was someone between the age of 50 and 64. So, but in the past, so we had higher numbers for those between 0 and 19. We had 4, 4, and 2. We've had from 20 to 29. The last time, which was back in May, we had 1. But it seems to be fluctuating. But the last time we had someone 75 and older was back on May 3rd. And that goes back to March 1st. That was the only time we had someone that age. And I think it's because that age were the first ones to get the vaccinations. So we've had a total of 737 cases in the town of Dayton.
Since the start?
Is that what
This is the start of
Since
the
the start,
pandemic.
yes, since they started the testing, which I believe goes back to March 2020.
Thank you.
Is there any public input?
No, not that I see on the Zoom, Mr. Chair.
Is there any public input from anybody on Zoom? Dr. Z, you want to read the announcements, please?
Sure. The town of Dayton public buildings are open to the public. The library is closed to the public but continues to offer curbside service. The town of Dayton food bank distribution will be held next on July 17th, 2021, which I believe is this Saturday, located at the town hall, 979 Somerset Avenue, low level as a drive-through. Reminder, license your dogs, it is the law. Leash your dogs for everyone's safety. All dogs 6 months of age or older must be licensed yearly beginning January 1st. All dogs must be restrained by a leash or chain when on any street or public place in town, per, not our decree, per the bylaw that residents came and put into effect. If you have any questions, please contact the clerk's office at 508-669-5411, option 2. And the 40-second hand mask challenge will pass through Dayton on Saturday, August 7th, 2021. Please support your friends with a donation at this annual event, which represents over 64% of the Jimmy Fund's annual revenue. Selectman Goulart,
Yes.
you were always had comments about the hand mask challenge. Do you have any insider info with this year's?
The chairman, I'll call him, the lead biker of my team actually retired from UMass after 20-some years, but he is still riding. I expect to meet him at the bridge on that day. We gave up trying to meet at DR because there's too many people. And so I intend to meet Eric down at the bridge, and his team is, his last name is Heller, so the team is Hellers on Wheels. And I lost track of how much money he's raised over the years, but I can tell you last year when it was really not an official ride, and they all did rides that would have been equivalent, and it wasn't the most money he's ever raised, but he told me that it was a good contribution. The target this year is $52 million over the 2 days. And there was an ad in the, I should say, a news item in the Attleboro paper, I think it was, indicating they are still looking for volunteers to go to Dayton Rehoboth, to be there to, I guess, help direct people, to feed people, do all the kinds of things, because that's the big lunch break, and that's where literally 5,000 people or more eventually pass through the DR site. And so they are looking for people to volunteer. And if people can't volunteer their time or money, just be out on the route, because it's Horton to Williams to Centers, and it's a straight shot over the bridge. And there's always people out there waving and cheering them on. So that's good too, just so they know they have the support. But yeah, it's a great cause, and hopefully they're gonna make their target this year.
Thank you.
And what's the time on this? When do we expect them to be coming through?
Well,
They used to give us the route and stuff.
some of them, I don't know how they get out of Sturbridge when they do, but people will start coming through Dayton very early in the morning. It seems like the traffic rush is somewhere between 10:30 and noon. Based on, where the police details are, but by 2 in the afternoon, they're gone. If there's any out there, they're just stragglers, but the crush comes through during that time period. And even if the weather's bad, that's when it seems to be. So I usually tell Eric, call me when you're getting ready to leave DR, I'll go down to the bridge and just wait for you. So that's what my plans are.
Nice.
Thank you. Thank you. The next agenda item is the town administrator's report.
Yes, and thank you, Mr. Chair. Can if I could actually move the request for the financial management review into that item as well. We don't actually have Zach Blake, but I did actually talk to him last week. I had a discussion with him, and I can give you an overview of what this, actually a request for a financial management review would be about. And there's like a draft letter in the packet, but essentially we, in our financial team, and in our town, we have had a number of transitions that, have already happened and that will continue to happen. We also, have been working on and planning a number of fiscal planning, capital planning issues as well. And as part of that, we're looking at policies, we're looking at procedures, and everything we're doing to really strengthen, the really good, fiscal position that we have now. And DLS, they actually have a very, very, very popular, program in bureau. And one of the things that's really valuable that, DLS, actually through DLS through DOR does is they do financial management reviews. We've never had one, actually back in 2012, the Dayton Water District went through one. And it's a very helpful, very constructive exercise where, actually DLS, they come in and they meet, with the Board of Selectmen, they meet with the FinCom, and they meet with our financial team, and they learn about our processes, they go through our budget. And it's about, a 3 to 4 month process, and then they make recommendations on that. So in talking with Mr. Blake, from DLS last week, he also agreed that our transitions that we, have ongoing, our goals with what we're trying to do with financial planning and capital investments, all of that really put us in a good position and a need, to have one of these reviews done. And it would be the hope, if we could get this letter to, actually DLS after tonight, that they could put us in the queue, a rough start date would be around, actually October. And then that would allow the project really to be, finished with the recommendations made, so we have them, as we plan forward for, fiscal year 2023, which will, actually be helpful there. So I'm excited about it. The really wonky side of me, it's just, I believe in this type of holistic and constructive looking, and assessing where we are and how we go forward. And at this point, I would recommend that we make the request, Mr. Chair.
Does the board have any questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, I'm trying to.
Yeah, that's.
Mr. Chairman, I motion that the Board of Selectmen approve submission of a request to the Division of Local Services for a financial management review.
I second.
And I just wanted to, I don't know if you said this and I apologize, just so the residents and taxpayers are aware, this is, as I understand, free of cost to the residents of Dayton. And that's why when we first discussed this, I thought it was such a worthwhile thing. As everybody knows, we have the principal assessor who is retiring. We have the treasurer collector, who I don't believe and has been very honest about probably not running again. So now is the time to have someone come in, and free is always good, and do that comprehensive review, give recommendations, point out areas for improvement, areas of strength as well. So I look forward to that, and I wanted to thank the town administrator for following through.
Any other questions or comments? If not, I'll ask for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstentions, ayes have it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So moving on, through the agenda, I believe the next, item in the agenda, is the announcement of nearly $119,000 grant award that the town actually learned about just after its last meeting. It's a shared street and spaces grant award from the Department of Transportation. And this is actually our second, it's our second grant award from, actually from the shared street and spaces, I think 2 years. So this is very exciting for the town. And actually, ever since our first grant, we've been working on the second. And I really want to thank Dr. Z. I also thank ADA Coordinator Gail, and Superintendent Tom Ferry for their work, over last fall, and in the winter. I'm actually, the town applied twice, and as they say, the third time was the charm. And we applied, and the really good thing is that town meeting, there was a special article that was reappropriated, actually to be able to actually fund a lot of the work now the grant will now pay for. And this essentially, it essentially frees up that $118,000 article. So it's good news all around. It's good news for the accessibility improvements that continue to be a priority for the town. It's another success in the federal bucket for grants. And it's and also that we're funding this really without actually relying on the Dayton taxpayer to help fund this. So I actually followed up with DOT earlier today. All we've heard actually so far is that we've got the grant, but I want to follow up. We have time frames and commitments, and I want to follow up and get that going, with the state so we can get everything off the ground and complete the project. So again, thank you, Dr. Z, and to Mr. Gale and to Mr. Ferry for their work.
Good work.
And
If I may just add to that, the past couple of years, I've heard a concern from a resident regarding Lincoln Village, that there's a crosswalk there and it goes to a sidewalk that doesn't have the ramp that work. And he contacted me again this week, and I was able to tell him that that's one of the items on the list.
You were the hero.
He was very pleased with that.
Good.
And so this is great news for the town. This is a great grant from Dr. Z, Jonathan Gale, Tom Ferry, and also our town administrator. And you mentioned in your letter, also Representative Pat Haddad and Senator Mark Pacheco for their assistance in getting this grant. So.
Yeah, and they've been extremely helpful all along. They're really, and I forgot to mention this, but in terms of the focus of the grant, it's actually applications, actually across town. We have improvements happening in North Dayton. We have improvements happening down actually by the library and Main Street. So there are going to be improvements actually across the community, and that's equally exciting because we're making investments in all of town. So
I think it's important while we have Selectman Goulart here, a former Selectman Goulart, just to say, I always knew sidewalks and possibly installing them was important, but I was always driving down the bridge and you get to that part and it's so pretty, you get to the top of the bridge and you can see in either direction, drive a little further. Just seeing the families walking down Center Street, for example, where those sidewalks are new, people exercising, and just to think back just a couple years ago, and you didn't really see that. I mean, you literally put your life in your hands walking down that street when there were no sidewalks. So I just think it's really important, and I want to be very clear, not just, although it will absolutely be a huge benefit for the elderly, for our seniors, for our disabled, but just in general for anyone. It is safer to have pedestrians on the sidewalks. So I just want to reiterate that and thank everyone for not just pioneering the installation like Selectman Goulart did of sidewalks, but really taking that ball and running with it and continuing to try to get grants to support these infrastructure projects throughout the town at no cost to the taxpayer. So thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if at all possible, if I could read into the record the locations of these improvements, so that the public listening to would be on record so that know if it affects their neighborhood. Infrastructure improvements as part of the Safe Streets and Path project and grant award will include 2 ADA compliant curb ramps and cuts to be installed on Main Street and Elm Street, Warner Boulevard and Spring Street, School Street and Lincoln Avenue by Johnny's Market, Summer Street and Spring Street, sidewalk across Bow Street and Spring Street and Winter Street. Also, crosswalks and 2 ADA compliant curb ramps will also be installed at Center Street near the Berkeley-Dayton Bridge, next to the Bristol County Agricultural School, Main Street near the Dayton Public Library, Lincoln Avenue at the Lincoln Village Senior Housing, and at the intersection between Lincoln Avenue and Spring Street. Thank you.
Thank you for letting the public know that.
Thank you. So, and then finally, if I could, Mr. Chairman, just a quick update, on the library, in the effort to procure the temporary modulars. So as part of the procurement process yesterday, actually along with the building commissioner, so like the building commissioner and myself, along with the library director and Rita Arujo from the library board of trustees, we took actually a road trip to Littleton. And we inspected a potential trailer that actually came back and we were quoted for as part of our procurement process. And we really got a good visual. We were able to talk and plan out exactly what type of programming we would have in the modular, and how that very temporary program would also relate to the egress work that after the engineering also actually started on that yesterday as well. It was a good meeting. We do have another call by the end of the week with another company. Who also responded to our RFQ and our request for quotes. So we're going to talk to that company. And then from there, in very short order, we're going to make a decision and a recommendation based on the prices, and the inspections and the conversations that were happening, both, we requested 3 quotes, we received actually 2 to date, both actually fit within the parameters of, our budget, and we hope to, have a plan again, to have all the work done, to have the modular, actually on-site delivered and up and running by Labor Day. So that is our target, that's also the requirement, and I do want to thank all of our partners in this effort too, because once we have the modular procured, we will then have conversations here locally about the driveway, about the parking, all the accessibility for the parking, and all of that. Additionally, we've already had conversations with the sewer commission, about the sewer tying. We've had conversations with the water district as well about the water hookup, on the site where the old Briggs house was as well. So we're engaging all the stakeholders that we need to already. We're going to continue doing that. And we have a plan to do that. But again, at this point, as I mentioned before a few weeks ago, we have in terms of our planning, we have a short-term plan to get this done by actually Labor Day to keep our accreditation from the state in check. And after that, we're going to really include that and continue through the we also have to have another short-term plan that looks at from now to 3 to 5 years, and then well beyond 5 years as well. So all that work, we actually had our FinCom meeting last night, actually had that a similar conversation with them about the stages and intersecting with capital outlay, and with the municipal building needs committee as well. So all these efforts are underway. It's a team effort, but we're making progress. So I just wanted to bring the public and the board up to date on that as well.
You had mentioned yesterday at the FinCom that once we sign off on whichever company we're gonna go for the module, it's gonna take about 30 days. That's really bringing us close to.
That's only one of the companies. And the other company, we believe at this point we can get a modular here soon.
Because now we'll have to wait till the 28th, I guess, to vote on it.
Yeah. Yes.
We could have a special. I would be, I'm sorry, I don't mean to say like we should. I will make myself available for one if the board wishes. I think that's a special occasion. You know, to,
Say that they put pressure on me, so I want to make myself available. This is what they do all the time, but I'll make myself available. Also, no, seriously, I'd be willing to, this is an important issue and we need to act on as quickly as possible.
Hey, I got a question for you, Mr. Chairman. Is it possible to maybe do a community day where once the building's set up, that people would pick up trucks and grab those books, bring them up and try to help the town to get that, so we meet the requirements?
like the highway department, you mean?
Well, highway department, but if they need additional help, like those people want to come out there, they just help, like bring books in, whatever, just try to get them up and running before that period ends where we save our accreditation, so we don't lose it. Because I think you'll get some people that would actually come out with their trucks on a Saturday and just say, what do you want me to do?
Yeah.
You know, just a thought.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I have a pickup truck, it's a small pickup truck, but I can
Same here.
clearly bring some books up. So that's a possibility on a Saturday. That would be great. And even people at the modular to set up the books and that kind of stuff too. I mean, we can deliver books.
Yeah, we bring them in and they set them up,
Set 'em up.
get them up and running.
That'd be great. It's a good idea.
Community
Absolutely.
bonding thing, that'd be great.
Bonding over books.
Yeah, probably gonna be ready to do again, but.
What else would we be doing? Moving our library.
Thank you.
May I ask a question, not so related directly to the library, but about the 5-year plan and how it all intertwines?
Mhm.
Is the municipal, so we know we're gonna have this period where, yes, we're working on the short-term solution, but like the long-term solution is we're waiting on a grant and we're on a list and we can't come off it because they're not accepting new ones. We all know that. Is it not possible for, and I don't know if it's the municipal building study committee, but if we could really start looping in the capital outlay committee and looking at the fire station has issues that need to be addressed, the highway garage has needs, and maybe this is the time where we need to advance the ball on one of those projects while we're the long-term solution for the library, where just our hands are tied in terms of the state agency that governs the giving of the grant. So I'm just thinking if we all want these projects to happen, we don't want to do one of the other. Selectmen Hull has said when we rolled into town meeting. So if we could rope in the capital outlay committee and start seeing if we want to move on the fire station, addressing whatever those issues are, thinking of solutions there, or the highway garage, or both. But I think we need to be doing something while we know that the library, we're sort of, that project is not gonna happen unless we get a grant, and even then it's still a question. We have to get the public to be on board, right? So that's gonna take time. So I just think we might wanna think about advancing the ball on one of the other projects while we know we're waiting.
I think we need to, the capital outlay committee needs to prioritize what they need to do. I mean, it was mentioned yesterday, that maybe the library is a 5-year down the road, but there is a process that we hopefully will happen soon. And regarding that, we do need two new members to the capital outlay committee, if I'm correct from last night. One is to be appointed by the FinCom, at-large member, as well as one from the Board of Selectmen.
I thought this was already done.
So the Board of Selectmen, initially appointed Chairman Pacheco, but the bylaw
No,
said.
I thought we already appointed someone. I sent everyone an email, like when I was acting town administrator about this, that we needed to have someone that wasn't from the board, and then FinCom needed to pick someone. So how are we 4 months down the road and we still haven't done it?
Well, in our defense, we've only had 2 meetings.
I don't mean it as an offense, by the way, I just.
Preliminary meetings. I believe we're going to meet again in August.
August 19th is the next scheduled meeting. So I believe in May, we erroneously, actually appointed Selectman Pacheco, but, and also,
I understand, it couldn't be, okay.
Yes.
I understand.
Yeah, so
I'm
you can
thinking we did it.
Liaison person, but I think you had a volunteer. I saw a handbook in the back, a volunteer, somebody who wants to be part of the capital outlay committee. No.
Oh, are you sure?
I didn't see
Are you
that.
sure?
But I would like to comment. This is directed at Selectman Hull. Each selectman had a list of capital projects they would work with, departments, each had two. Mine's the highway department and the fire department, so obviously you inherited those.
I'm on the highway department, Brett is going to do the
I
fire.
inherited the
Yes.
fire,
So-
which you made a lot of
He's got
progress.
his two, but then they also took one of your, each, my colleagues took one of your projects on. I was very silent until this time, we did not volunteer.
So, the fact of the matter is, there is also the one that all three of you should be looking in at, and that is the townwide fuel station.
Yes.
Where we are with that, I should say where we were with that, we were trying to get DEP to send this particular individual out to meet with us. And Mr. Ferry knows who it is, he can give you the name.
Okay.
And it was left, we're gonna get back to you. Well, needless to say, the election came, and I thought of this again. We need to get in touch with DEP to talk about the fuel-wide, town-wide, fuel station
Right.
at the landfill. But connected to that is also the potential for a highway garage at the landfill. Because it is a landfill, we need to have DEP involved. So we really need to reach out to that individual and get an appointment and have them come here and meet with the appropriate people, do the site visit, because my understanding is we need DEP permission
Yeah.
to do this. We actually had an engineer from, I want to say Weston and Sampson. When they came to town to look at some things that we had potentially, and they did the study of the dam. This is way back when, under that phase 1 and phase 2, when Mrs. Aaronstein was here. Tommy and I took them around town and showed them some potential others, and it was the landfill site that we talked about. And having had both of those departments on my list, Chief McGee is looking for either in addition to Station 1 or a new station. Mr. Ferry is looking for a new facility, because if you look at all the facilities in town, we finally had a police station. That was probably the worst. We replaced it. And I would say the next one on the list, as far as overall condition and serviceability, is the highway garage. We're fortunate that when we had the oil leak spill, that we had to dig up the parking lot out front and clean up the mess. And they lost some storage space. We were fortunate that the old police station is used just for storage. But if something can be done about the relocation of the highway department to an appropriate facility at the landfill, that's gonna free up 2 pieces of property that the town owns that could be potential development for businesses or whatever. So just something to think about. I'm glad to know that you split up these and we're working on them.
Absolutely. We're not gonna let your hard work. I do wanna commend you though. I did meet with Chief McGee recently to go over the list, and I know it was a list that you guys had worked together on. And, you know, there's still a lot of big items there, but a lot of them have been checked off. So I just
Yes.
wanted to thank you both for working together and making a lot of progress on that.
Both, the citizens of Dayton have been very generous to both the fire department and the highway department. And because since we formed our committee, the 3 of us with our projects, the list of equipment that those departments have asked for has been reduced. And yes, there were substantial purchases. And so certainly we need to thank the voters for funding those. That was really good. So there has been a lot of progress made.
Absolutely. I did just wanna also point out relative to the capital outlay committee, Mr. Chairman, we did receive recently within the last 2 hours an application from Sean Urban for the capital outlay committee, so maybe we could act on that at the next meeting. And he'd be great on it. So,
Would that be our representative?
yeah, we're stealing him, absolutely.
Yes, it's
We'll
the
make the
at-large member
finance
that the
committee
board of
work for
selectmen
theirs.
to appoint.
I did have the opportunity to meet with Mr. Ferry on Saturday to discuss my appointment. And I'm going to be meeting with him individually, just so people know. I don't know when the man sleeps. He has given both the fuel storage and town garage a lot of thought. He has preliminary plans. The one thing that he voiced a concern, and it is a concern of mine as well, is coordination with the capital outlay committee. Right now, we have 3 potential major projects. Fire department, South Main Street, DPW building, and library. Now, that puts a lot of pressure on the capital outlay for establishing a priority list. And logistically, what he voiced to me, and I have a concern, is how the capital outlay is going to process 3 different groups coming in and all advocating their project. Keeping in mind the history, as many of us know, how other projects, for example, the library, have been bumped by different other groups who had either stronger political advocates or need, because of, in the case of the police station, the feds were on Beckman's case.
Correct.
So that was the one area, as far as his plan, he felt confident he could put something together in a timely fashion. But what is a timely fashion based on, the capital outlay committee is a relatively new group. So there's a lot of pressure on them to.
Well, they existed, they've always existed, but unfortunately, the problem was there weren't like a lot of members, and then it really was just Mr. Rendon, unfortunately, and so he was already on finance committee, so I think he just things just fell on him as an individual, so now we've revamped it, and that's a major question, but I think they will sort it out with things like how much things are gonna cost. What is actually needed? Is it a new building? Is it a renovation or expansion? And I think that would help guide them in terms of the timing and prioritization of everything. To not have it just be, well, we think it should, a group of people that say, well, we think it should be X, Y, and Z,
Is there anyone on capital outlay from the assessor's office?
I don't think that's per the bylaw, no. So the residents vote, I don't have it in front of me and I apologize, I know it's the treasurer, the town administrator, the building commissioner, a member of the finance committee, someone appointed by the finance committee, someone appointed by the board of selectmen, and there's someone I'm forgetting on.
Town accountant.
Town accountant, thank you. And I think those are the 7 individuals, as I recall.
Yes, the building commissioner is not on it, but there's an interface with him in the municipal building needs committee.
Okay.
Is the treasurer in position to be able to speak about how the price of a project will impact taxes?
I would assume the treasurer would work directly with the assessing department.
Yes,
to
he
be
knows
able to
the ball.
answer those
Yes.
questions, yeah. Because essentially it's the treasurer that pays the bill.
Right.
They should know if we can pay the bill essentially or not, so, yeah, absolutely.
It's gonna take, all these 3 projects that we just talked about are needs, not just wants, but they're
Correct.
needs. We need a library, we need a highway department, and the fire station is either renovation or a new fire station. These are all important issues. I think it's important that when it comes to special town meetings and we get this so-called free cash, that we put money in our stabilization, the capital outlay stabilization fund, so that when this become available, we can use those funds and not have such a burden on taxpayers. So the library is, which was mentioned yesterday, is probably a 5-year project, so we're not gonna vote tomorrow to build a new library and have it there in 6 months from now. So that's gonna take a little bit of time. We have, before the library commission in the state, we've been given that $4 million grant to renovate Handle Carnegie. We have to do matching funds. I'm not in support of that. I've made that clear to everybody.
I don't think the townspeople are gonna pass that. Whenever it comes, they tell us this is $4 million, I think the town's gonna reject it. We'll have an opportunity, hopefully, to have an engineer design a new library for us and where we're gonna place it, and go before the commission again, library commission, ask for a grant for that. That's gonna take a few years. So we can work on these other projects. We can't even apply for that now, because they're not accepting any.
Can I
And
ask
the competition is very high for that, yes.
regarding just the library portion that you were just talking about, I feel like you were just giving us like an example, but were you suggesting that we would, even though it seems like everybody is on board for the fact that we don't want to see that building renovated in that manner, because it's not, it's no longer like that Andrew, I don't feel like I'm speaking for the historical people, but I have heard their concerns, and it's no longer the Andrew Carnegie building that we were gifted. Are you suggesting that we would wait for that process to play out with that grant before making a decision can't we just withdraw if we're all,
I think,
you know,
I know
everyone?
what you're saying, I think we ought to keep it there until we're eligible to apply for a grant again. And then we have to go before the townspeople, get the funds to do an engineering, design of a new building, and then we ought to apply and then withdraw.
But we're not letting it go to the people with that project,
Well, it depends on what
Okay,
the
I see
state
what you're
was, and, we were given that grant, they didn't give us $4 million, but they said we're eligible, we're on the list, I think we're maybe number 14, or somewhere down the road, they usually do 2 a year, so then it could be 7 years. This isn't, my point was that the library is not gonna be immediate, it has to be on our radar, it's clearly on my radar, so we have to not forget that, but there's other projects too, but we need to start saving money so that we can do these purchases, and not put the whole burden on the tax of the residents. Mrs. Goulart, please.
And the other thing I want to mention that kind of relates to what Mr. Hall said was, when the three of us had our project assignments and we were all working on them, we knew that once the study for the sewer line that came in, we got a price tag, it's like, well, that's going to be on hold. Again, the library is on hold, but other projects that we had, making buildings handicap accessible and renovating this building and next door into, obviously those are moving ahead. This building's done and next door is, making good progress. Fire and highway, we made progress relative to, they had lists of equipment and we did make progress. But not in any of our 3 assignments were there plans to add on to the elementary school. That popped up like a mushroom. And we had the money to pay for it, we didn't borrow it. But by the same token, going forward, even though the capital outlay committee per se doesn't deal with school issues, because we're waiting to hear from their study committee or their capital outlay committee, we have to be cognizant of the fact down the road that may happen. That's why it's important for the board to move forward with, I'll call them the in-town issues. And another thing you need to be thinking about, and I've discussed this with the town administrator, with these pilot agreements that are being approved, the money's gonna start coming in, even though some of them haven't broken ground. But the July 1st bills will be going out based on the schedule. The board needs to take action and discuss how that money is going to be handled. When Mr. Swartz was still on the finance committee, I had talked about that and said, that money, a large portion, if not all of it, needs to be put into special accounts, whether it's the capital stabilization or regular stabilization, so that when projects come along that are going to require either payments or even bond issue payments, the money's there. Mr. Swartz and I didn't agree. He felt that that money has to be on the table. I would just say to you, you're going to have to discuss it. This is considered, it's not one-time money, but we're getting the money up front, front-loaded, so that the most money will be coming into the town at the beginning of the contracts, whether it's a 20-year contract or a 15-year contract, maybe pilot agreement. But on a future agenda, you need to have this discussion, because I don't think it should be on the table that can be expended for the routine operating expenses for the town. That you saw at the last or we read at the last Rehoboth town meeting, they were able to acquire properties to handle some of their needs. And they did it. A lot of it had to do with earmarked money from pilot agreements. Interesting thing, I happened to get a copy of a pilot agreement from Rehoboth that's on the landfill. Their pilot agreements are 20, this one's 20 years, it's the same amount of money every single year. And when I looked at that, I thought, no, we're not doing that in Dayton. That's why we went with front loaded. But anyhow, this is just something you need to think about, because there will be money coming in. But you need to, and if they're gonna, I believe Mrs. Beauregard said the first payments will be due this, on that bill that comes out for, the one we all got, through the 1st of August. So, we need to start thinking about and discussing how are we going to handle the receipts from pilot agreements, because it's that important.
And you and I went to that MSA meeting in Cabo.
Yes.
They were able to build fire station, police station.
No, the fire station library and the money they had for the police station. The police was still in the old building down the road, but they had the money to do it, and it was pilot agreements on cranberry bogs. So, we all know that money is for either 15 or 20 years based on the pilots that we have so far. But that doesn't mean we're always going to have the money, and we're getting most of the money up front. So that these small amounts that will come in as those pilots don't, expire, that is not the kind of money you want to say, oh, we're getting a big chunk, let's put it into the operating budget, because you know what? It decreases every year. And once you set that amount of money, if you're relying on it, are you going to go back to the taxpayers and say, oh, by the way, it's decreasing, so we need it from
$70,000.
That's why you really need to discuss this soon. Mr. Mullen, you had a comment?
Yeah, to that point, just really quickly, that's exactly when I had that discussion with, actually Zach Blake at the Department of Revenue, about our financial management review. I specifically said, I mentioned our pilots, and I also mentioned the marijuana revenue, that we have good reason at this point to believe will eventually come into the town. And I asked him, as part of this review, and DOR has worked with us and DLS has worked with us to make recommendations, as to what, are the specific aspects of the laws, and the regulation through DOR, that we have that ability as a town to make sure we do it to, to actually make recommendations, to town meeting to separate that out. So we have, actually potential funding sources for the capital, so that's exactly how we're looking to go forward.
I just also want to point out before we move on, that every year since, at least we've been here together, and you too, Selectman Pacheco, we have tried to, and we have actually put money into the capital stabilization. There have been years where we did that, but then we put less than we had anticipated because we ended up, lowering the tax rate. There's many other things that we've done with the free cash that wasn't just, spend it. So I'd be open also to a discussion about, instead of lowering the tax rate, which by the way, most people are gonna see a higher tax bill because your house is worth more year after year. We can't control that, and I think we need to accept the fact that we've lowered the tax rate 5 out of the last 6 years, unfortunately, because homes are, it's a seller's market right now, we all know that. Homes are worth more, and we can only really tinker around the edges, but what we can do, to what Selectman Goulart is saying, is put more money in that stabilization account, knowing what we have down the pipe. I'm happy to have that conversation and assess our approach to free cash at the upcoming special town meeting going forward.
My question was, is there a limit, maximum, in that stabilization account that we can add?
No, I don't think that's what it is. Selectman Goulart is saying no.
When the Board of Selectmen, working with the town administrator, comes up with a plan on what to do with money from pilot agreements and the cannabis, when that gets up and running. Any money that comes in, they will classify, but it's gonna take a vote at town meeting of the voters, a 2/3 vote to actually put it into one account, two account, whatever, and it's that 2/3 vote that gets it to come out of there. The most important thing is, with the money we have been able to put aside into stabilization or capital stabilization has been based on what we've had in free cash. And when we've had years when, for example, the building commissioner had a good year with building permits and all of that, local receipts, we had money to put aside. But what you have to focus on this is new money. It's not related to, for example, building permits. The money that the building commissioner charges for a solar farm building permit goes into estimated receipts and closes out to free cash. The pilot agreements, that's not where it goes. That's why it's important. You've got to identify what your plan is. Voters still have to vote to move it into those accounts if that's where you're gonna go. But the whole thing is, you will know ahead of time what kind of money we're talking about. Assuming everybody pays their tax bills because we've got a schedule. It's new money. Not only that, it's gonna continue to decrease each year. Yes, we're gonna have new pilots because we've got farms going on that we haven't negotiated for yet. But eventually, they're all gonna go away sometime unless they all replace the panels and keep going, which we have no way of knowing. We can only go about 20 years at this point, and the first 10 years are the important years. And that's why it's important to say this is new money, this is not based on local receipts, it's not based on how many permits are issued or anything else. This is special money, and that's why you need to really think about what you're gonna do with it. Quite frankly, to protect it, so that it's there if you need it. When, not if, when you need it. It's gonna be when you need it, okay?
Thank you, Storm.
Mr. Mullin, you think we could have something ready for the special town meeting, or is this something that should be at the annual town meeting?
For the pilots, I'm hoping, actually for the pilots in marijuana, I'm hoping to have something ready for special town meeting. There are templates out there, like in terms of wording, like in working with DOR. I'm hoping, but I don't want to commit to be able to do it, but that's my goal.
I will, this is our first rodeo, and I know you want to move on, Mr. Chairman. I will just caution you about automatically thinking we should put the money from the cannabis businesses into the stabilization account, and the reason is, I think we should wait maybe 6 months, a year to see, because we don't know that if it's gonna have any impact. Like a solar farm just sits there, like you said, and you were talking about this earlier, it doesn't really require many resources or services from the town, but we don't know like if there's gonna be break-ins, and then please know, I'm not fear-mongering, I'm not saying that's what's gonna happen, but we don't know if that's what's gonna happen, quite frankly. And I think it puts us in an uncomfortable position to think that we're gonna put that money right away into a stabilization account when we don't know if there are going to be potential increases to services as a result of these businesses being here. And I know you are.
So yeah, and if I could just really put, what we're talking about isn't that, like actually per se, putting that money into stabilization at least yet. It's explaining and working with DOI to explain, like in a special town meeting warrant article about how that revenue is gonna be segregated, like essentially from other revenues, potentially.
And I think we need to keep track of at least the impact fee money, so we
Oh, yes.
definitely
Yeah.
have to do that, yeah. Thank you.
No problem, thank you.
The next agenda item is old business. We had an open meeting law complaint resolution. I received an email on July 2nd from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Office of the Attorney General, dear Chairman Pacheco. This office received a complaint from Patrick Higgins on March 14, 2021, alleging that the Dayton Board of Selectmen, the board, violated the open meeting law, General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 18 through 25. The complaint was originally filed with the board on February 12th, and the board responded by letter dated February 25th. In this complaint, Mr. Higgins alleges that the board convened an executive session in order to accomplish statutory purpose. To resolve this complaint by informal action in accordance with 940 Code of Massachusetts Regulations 29.07 2A. I find that the board violated the open meeting law by meeting in executive session without a proper statutory purpose. In reaching this determination, we reviewed the original complaint, the board's response to the complaint, and the complainant request for further review. We also reviewed the video recording of the Board of Selectmen's public meeting on January 25th and February 12th. The open meeting law requires that meetings of a public body be promptly noticed and open to members of the public unless an executive session is convened. See General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 28-B 21. A public body may enter an executive or closed session for any of the 10 purposes enumerated in the open meeting law, provided that it is first convened in an open session, that a majority of members of the body have voted to go into executive session, that the vote of each member is recorded by roll call and entered into the minutes, and the chair has publicly announced whether the open session will reconvene at the conclusion of the executive session, General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, B. One permissible reason to convene an executive session is to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel, or to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with non-union personnel, General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A2, Purpose 2. However, a public body may not discuss an individual's professional competence in executive session. See District Attorney for the North District versus School Committee of Wayland, 455 Mass. 561, 568 in 2009. Although it's clear that professional competence must first be discussed in open session, how that evaluation will factor into a contract or salary negotiation strategy may be suitable discussion for executive session. OML 2019-57-2. During the January 25th meeting, the board entered executive session for two purposes, the first of which was the subject of this complaint. On the meeting notice, the board cited the open meeting law executive session purpose 2, and further specified that the board will discuss an update on performance evaluation. Performance evaluations and discussions of an employee professional competence must occur in open session as they do not fit within any of the 10 permissible purposes to enter executive session. See OML 2021-45, OML 2018-38. Therefore, if the board had discussed the performance evaluation of professional competence of an individual employee in executive session, this would have been a violation of the open meeting law. In response to the complaint, the board asserts that the board did not enter executive session to discuss the performance evaluation of professional competence of any individual. Rather, the board states that it discussed a more general topic, the performance evaluation process for non-union personnel. This purpose also does not fit within any of the 10 permissible purposes for convening an executive session, nor is therefore not a permissible topic for the January 25th executive session. See OML 2019-59. For this reason, we find that the board violated the open meeting law by meeting an executive session without a lawful purpose. We order the board immediate and future compliance with the open meeting law and caution the board that a determination by out of office or similar violation in the future may be considered evidence of intent to violate the open meeting law. We also order the board, if it has not already done so, to release to the public within 30 days of receipt of this letter a portion of the January 25th executive session meeting minutes, which relate to the impermissible performance evaluation discussion. However, this order does not extend to any portion of the January 25th executive session minutes that were convened under a separate executive session purpose, and we make no ruling on the permissibility of the board continuing to withhold minutes on other topics. We now consider this complaint addressed by this determination to be resolved. This determination does not address any other complaint that may be pending without office of the board. Please feel free to contact the division at 617-963-2540 if you have any questions. And it's signed by Sarah Monahan, Assistant Attorney General, Division of Open Government. A copy of this was sent to the Patrick Higgins, Lake Board of Selectmen, and Executive Assistant Karen Grady. So we're going to at some point review the executive board minutes and then vote in the executive session to hopefully to release those minutes, and hopefully we'll have that done before August 2nd, maybe August 1st. It's 31 days, say 30 days. So hopefully we'll have that. Any questions regarding that?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
since I was on the board at the time, I
We were
worked.
gonna blame it on you, but we didn't.
Now, that's okay. Since I was on the board at the time, I wasn't aware he actually filed it. I remember him being at a number of meetings, and I remember explaining to him in open session when he said that we had done something wrong. And I thought all of his concerns were addressed, and he said he was going to withdraw whatever. But again, there were so many.
Yeah.
Obviously, one he sent in. My other thought is, in listening to what you just read, the only part of those executive session minutes that have to be released are the part that relates to that specific thing. The other topics in there, if you will all be blanked out. I don't even remember what happened that night, that's why I like to see them, because I have been reviewing the executive session minutes for Mrs. Brady, and some of them I have marked clearly do not release litigation in process or whatever. And then others I just put, okay, to release and a date in my initials, but I was surprised to hear that he did actually, as I said, there were so many, we couldn't keep track of them anymore. But I would certainly like to look at them, and I will give you my opinion on what I think, what is being referred to. Because certainly, I'm glad it came out that way. There was never any intent to violate anything. And I think that, I think the board has always done what it has in the best interest in trying to be in compliance with the open meeting law. We're all well aware of it. How many times have we said, for example, can we go such and such? And the question is that going to violate the open meeting law? When you and I went on the town boat to find out what the harbor master does and to get an understanding of what his needs were. We didn't violate anything. We got information. We didn't discuss it. We came back and talked to the board. So I'm glad it came out this way. And certainly having a committee, we don't have executive sessions, but obviously the stormwater committee, we're very careful about even discussing people in open session, because obviously we can't do that either. I'll be glad to look at it.
May I ask you a question?
Yeah, I don't remember this complaint also. I do remember other complaints that Mr. Higgins has filed, but I don't remember this particular complaint. Yes,
My only question is, I'm not disputing that Selectman Goulart was on the board and had been working on minutes, but they're not on the board now, so I guess my question is, since this document is not technically a public document, the executive session minutes, is that allowed for a non-board member?
That complaint is against the Board of Selectmen at the time the event took place.
Can we check with town council first?
If in fact, to go a step further, which I'm glad they didn't, if in fact there were a serious violation, they would levy fines, and they would be levied against the 3 selectmen who were present that night, and the 3 selectmen would have to pay those fines out of their own pockets. Town of Dayton would not pay them. So that's something else that I think we've always kept in mind, that if there is a violation that is found to be truly a violation, and fines are issued, it's the individual selectmen or board members who were accused of the violation that would have to pay it, okay? So Mr. Hull was not here, okay? Mr. Hull will
What
be
do you mean, he's not gonna have to pay now?
I thought they would be paid.
Yeah.
After I
don't know.
After I have a chance to look at it, I will send it back to the chairman. He can share it with the board. The existing board will have to vote to release the sections that were referred to as okay to release by the AG.
So do you still think you ought to check with the town council on that?
I don't think it hurts to check, I'm not an expert, that's why I'm saying that. I'm not disagreeing with anything you're saying, I think it could raise another issue, like if we, like I understand what she's saying, and she was a former board member and like she's in those minutes, but like what's stopping us from giving it to anybody at that point? Do you know what I mean? That's not a board member, I don't know, I just would feel more.
Well, and I would just say to you, the minutes that I have been asked to review go back a number of years. And again, to help Mrs. Brady to figure out what is the best way to go and what is the best information or recommendation to give to the board. That's what I've done, okay? So if you are going to act on those, you need to know that if the ones I reviewed, I have marked on them, and she knows exactly which ones that I said, you can release these, and I wrote, don't release, and the reason for it. So I just let you know that too, okay? I can also tell you I had an open meeting law violation filed against me after I left the board of selectmen.
Just
The
now?
first time.
Oh,
Okay, the first time, no, not
I've
lately.
seen a patent here.
Not lately, because the individual who would normally file them, I think moved away, but literally, I had one filed on me when I left office, sometime in 2010. And, I contacted town council and said, why am I not aware of all of this? And he said, I've been waiting for you. I says, not only will I write you the narrative of what happened that night, I will draft a letter to, at the time it was the local district attorney, it wasn't the AG. And I said, I will even draft a letter to the district attorney, which I hope you will consider putting on your letterhead and sending, because it explains the whole thing. And there was no further action. It was explained to the person who filed a complaint, and that was the end of it, okay? But it happens.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to us checking to see if legal counsel.
Oh, no, that's okay.
Is it okay? I suspect it's gonna say it's okay. She was involved in those meetings. I've always felt a little uncomfortable, as the board knows, Mr. Hull doesn't know yet, but when I had to vote on executive board minutes that I wasn't even a participant, I wasn't even a member of the board, you're gonna be dealing with that in the future. So I think it's a good idea to have, she was an active member of the board of selectmen. This is a complaint, this particular one is a complaint against the board of selectmen at that time. So I think it's gonna be okay. Let's just get some clarification so we'll make sure we're not making any.
Furthermore, if fines ever come down, you wanna know who's gonna have to pay them.
well, and that's my main concern. I mean, they did say they're dropping it, so, meaning no further action, no further dropping
But
it.
they wanna make sure that we're not gonna have a patent here until this.
It's a warning, it's a
Yes.
slap on the hand and it's a warning, okay?
And they just want us
So any
to.
future fines will be absorbed by Mr. Hull.
That is correct, all three portions.
Absolutely.
Just so the public is aware, basically what the Attorney General's office is saying is that we want you to post the minutes that show that you discussed in executive session, just a general update on the process of the performance evaluation.
Just a section,
Correct,
not
from,
all the minutes.
correct,
Just
so
a
just
section.
that discussion, and that is what we will review and get posted as soon as we possibly
That's what I
can.
expect.
Okay?
The next agenda item is selectmen's reports and comments. I'll give an update on the selectmen's retreat. We had a retreat in this building here this past Saturday, July 10th. It was lasted between 10 and maybe 12:30. The board of selectmen and Ms. Brady was here as well as the town administrator. And we discussed many, many issues. The part that I would just talk about, anybody, obviously you were there, so if you want to add to this, is special town meeting, article brainstorming and planning. So we discussed several articles that will be going on the special town meeting. The dog kennel bylaw, this will be from the Board of Health, the Trails Committee feasibility study. This was postponed from our annual town meeting to the special town meeting. The Brook Street solar pilot, which I understand is very close if not completed at this time. Speed zone bylaw, ARPA funding, infrastructure, and public health and safety. This is the American Rescue Plan. When we discuss the needs of the town and how we can utilize these funds. Library Building Study Committee, we may be coming up with that committee. And the other thing was, we discussed that Sunland coming up with a flag policy. As I mentioned at this meeting, I had an opportunity to speak to town council, and I've asked them to look into a flag policy that other towns may have and what the state has for a flag policy so that we don't end up getting sued. And what we talked about was, once we get the flag policy from the town council, we'll make a decision on it. We'll then have a public hearing to get input from the residents, the public regarding the flag policy. Then we'll vote, hopefully to put it on the warrant, and then it'll be on the warrant at the special town meeting, and the residents of Dayton can vote on the flag policy one way or the other. So I just want to let and we also discussed our,
Did you mention, maybe you didn't, I'm sorry, I was trying to listen very close.
yes, I did mention.
Did we, no, did you also mention that so we did actually take a vote as a board, and we did mention that, yes, town council will be crafting it, we will have the public hearing, and then give people an opportunity to give their feedback and possibly incorporate some of that into the final product.
Yes.
Just so people know that we are listening to them.
And we had a healthy discussion about that. We had different ideas as far as that, but I think the resolution was a fair resolution for the residents, for the board. So I look forward to that public hearing and seeing what the town council comes up with. Anybody else wish to add as to what happened at the retreat? We did go over our different 5-year plans. I was with the library with the compliance for our town buildings. Mrs. Goulart was no longer a member of the board of selectmen, but my colleagues on the board took over her to items. Who took the highway? Was it you? I did. Who took the highway? You took the fire station. And you reiterated your 5-year plans and your items also. Anything else?
No, I think that was good. I just wanted to state, just to be a little more specific, for the speed zone bylaw, that would be specifically for Pleasant Street and related to the speed safety zone that the selectmen had previously approved at a board of selectmen meeting.
Is there any other selectmen reports? If not, we'll go to new business. The first one is to ratify town accountant employment of contractor Janelle Bynum. I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I motion that we ratify the employment contract between the town of Dayton and Ms. Janelle Bynum as approved, as previously approved in executive session with the amendments mentioned at that time.
Is there a second?
I second.
Any discussion? If not, all vote.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
excuse me, point of order, have you actually appointed her yet? You gotta appoint her before you approve a contract.
I think we did appoint her.
I don't know the name, so I'm just asking a question.
Yes, I
We
think
did
we're
appoint
going to pending contract
Correct.
negotiations.
Yes, we did last
That's
year.
that's what we did.
Thank you.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye. Aye. It passes. The next item.
Before we move on, I
Yeah.
just wanted to point out that any chance that, since we've been on the board of selectmen together, we have done our best to hire folks from Dayton, because who knows Dayton better than people who live here, right? It's a quirky little town. And I just wanted to say, I'm really happy that we appointed and have now ratified Ms. Vining's contract. I think, she's from here, she has family here, and she's gonna serve the town well and be here for, quite frankly, a long time, as long as she wants. So I think it's a good thing for the town, and I just wanted to highlight that and thank everyone.
And I think the town will realize that we needed a very good choice in this. It's fine. The next agenda item is the clerical union sick leave bank town employees we received from Kerry East. Good afternoon, everyone. Once again, I'm reaching out seeking 2 interested nominated clerical union members who will be interested in serving on the committee. Under the current contract, the sick bank committee needs to be established, comprised of 5 members. 3 members shall be appointed at the discretion of the union, and 2 shall be appointed at the discretion of the town. Please provide your interest by email. So,
But we can only appoint union members?
no, the union's gonna appoint the 3 members, right? And then we're paying.
Yes, and then the town itself has the ability to appoint the town members. So there are gonna be 5 members, on the sick leave bank, committee. The union will appoint 3, the town will appoint 2.
I don't recall ever appointing someone. Does anyone know who we appointed previously?
No, this is on the new contract.
Oh, okay, all right, that's why I don't
So I'm,
remember.
yeah. So I'm gonna ask that, it's, my board was selecting that town administrator here as one of the members, and myself, since I was part of the negotiations for the clerical union.
No, just kidding.
Do you guys feel, comfortable with that, or?
Absolutely.
Yeah, no issue. I was gonna make a motion if you are accepting them. Mr. Chairman, I motion that the Board of Selectmen appoint Mr. Michael Mullen, Town Administrator, and Chairman Ken Pacheco to serve on the sick leave bank as the town's committee, as the town's appointees.
There was a second,
I second.
discussion?
This is for the duration of this contract, right? Do you pick like new ones for the next one? Or is this it?
I can get back to you, like, and I can get
Yeah,
back.
it's not an important thing, you know, it's good for at least a year.
Yeah, no, I can find out.
Okay.
Okay.
No further questions on my end.
Just wondering, should we word it specifically by the individual or the position?
In what way?
That the two members that we appoint would be the town administrator, whomever it may be,
Okay, I see, I see,
and the
not,
chairman of the board,
sure, I
whomever
will,
it may be,
Mhm.
so that year after year, we wouldn't have to address it.
but then it'd always be the chairman, what if you didn't like the chairman? You don't want them to.
You know what I'm saying?
I just think we need some, consistency, so I'm okay with what you had just, mentioned earlier, that the contract, it was 2020, it was 2020 that was approved?
I believe it was.
So 2023, it will expire if we have an interest in, I may not have an interest, or may not be on the board at that point, but I think because I was involved in this particular contract, I'm somewhat familiar with the sick bank. And also as a state employee, I'm familiar with our sick bank that we have. I don't think I would want to go further than the current contract.
Okay. Understood.
If I'm no longer on the board, we're gonna have to appoint somebody anyway, so.
Okay, are you okay with keeping it the way it is?
As it
For
was,
the duration of this
Sure.
contract?
Sure.
Okay.
All those in favor say aye. The next agenda item, new business is health and benefit of time carried over request. Good afternoon, this was, June 23rd, good afternoon. After a discussion this morning with the town administrator, I am respectfully requesting to carry over an additional 14 hours of benefit of time in addition to the 56 hours already requested for a total of 70 hours. Your consideration in this matter would be greatly appreciated. So what's the board's feeling about this?
I want to state for the record, I do know the background to this request, and I am extremely, extremely empathetic to the request. My personal opinion is, I'm feeling a little bit conflicted because anytime that the board makes a decision that's just for one individual or one position, after we made a blanket that we're gonna let, you know, we're only gonna do 2 weeks of carryover, or whatever the CBA says is what goes. I just feel like when we steer from that and make an exception, you know, it tends to stir up the sand on the bottom of the lake, if you will. And so I am hesitant to approve it for that reason. And it has nothing to do, again, with the individual making the request.
I guess the only comment that I would
And I know
make is.
Selectmen also have.
Oh, I see it, but let me just finish this. So he normally would be working 20 hours a week, so he's able to carry 56 hours over to the next fiscal year. But as we all know, he's been working a lot more hours. Most of our employees, many of our employees work 35 hours a week, which would mean that he would be able to, if we had 35 hours, he'd be able to carry over 7 hours. So I guess, given the unique situation, we have the pandemic, he as well as the administrator put in a lot of hours, and I would not be opposed to carrying over. I understand your concern.
Well, you're the chair, these, the angry people are coming to you.
That's fine.
I'm just teasing.
Yeah, so I would not necessarily oppose this. Selectman Hull?
Mr. Mullin, what is your recommendation?
To be honest with you, I see like a lot of logic with Chair Pacheco's sentiments about the fact that for the majority of the last year, the health agent has worked for 35 hours. And if he was, and if he actually worked, and if he was on the book, so to speak, for working that, he would have been able to carry over. So if he's on the books, if he was on the books for working actually 35 hours a week rather than 28 hours a week, everything would be a wash anyhow. I also know, and I also agree completely with Dr. Z that all of us have worked hard, especially this year, to level set exactly what the expectation would be. And we worked hard at that, and there were a lot of frankly, difficult conversations that we had to have at that end, which we had. But I do know at the end of, for the month of June, the health agent was actually working and making a very diligent effort to use this time. And, but he also had a number of inspections that were tied to financing, like in lending and mortgages that were outstanding, where in order for residents to be able to satisfy the terms, of their financing and lending, at the very end of the month of June, he was up straight doing inspections to help our residents really satisfy the terms, of their obligations as well. And to those, and I think even though we have been working actually very hard at holding the line, I think the extended circumstances to, actually everything at the end of June, can also along with the fact that realistically and practically for the, for the better part of fiscal year 21, he was essentially working 35 hours a week. I would recommend approval.
And I just, before the, my comments probably led everyone to believe that I was gonna vote no. I never stated how I was voting. I was just letting everyone know I understand and I really feel, I know he was actually attempting to take a vacation in June. That obviously never happened because I ended up having a conversation with the office manager and he was still there and I said, isn't he on vacation? So I'm fully aware and I'm fully open, and I wanted to thank my colleague Selectman Pacheco. I didn't think of it that way. I didn't think of it that from the perspective of 28 hours on paper, but really in all actuality, they've been working 35 and really more than 35, let's be honest. My mind's not made up.
I'm going to mention a point, and I may be off base, so please help. During the month of June, this individual also took on an extremely important role, working and representing stormwater in negotiations with the Conservation Commission on the issue of Dora Estates. We've talked about this from the perspective of the Board of Health, with those hours and the negotiations and the inspections and all the additional time that he put in, which with current negotiations still going on, have been crucial to the cause of Dyke on water, on the issue of stormwater. And I'm quite confident that the former selectman Goulart would also agree. These were duties that were above and beyond his role as a health agent. I didn't hear that in earlier discussion, but based on what I know that he did, I would be in favor of this request.
Okay, I'm happy to make the motion.
And I will accept the motion.
Mr. Chairman, I motion, that we approve the request from our health agent to carry over a total of 70 hours into fiscal year, of vacation, into fiscal year 2022.
I second it.
Any further discussion? If not, all those.
Mr. Chairman?
Mrs. Goulart?
If Selectman Hall had not mentioned the latest event that erupted, another one of those planned things that just popped up that we had to deal with and we're still dealing with. I had a long discussion with him and I said, I need you, you're the only one that can do what needs to be done. You've got to review the plans, you've got to do the response and everything else, because it's somebody with his education background and a certification, because he's the only one we have in the employment of the town that I'm aware of, and he was on the stormwater committee that could go through the plans and show where, let's say, corrections, adjustments, refinements had to be made. And the other thing too is, I said, and you know what, I don't want anything about 3 hours, I know you have 3 hours a week stormwater. Spend the amount of time you need on this project regardless, because we need you, you're the only person that can do this. And he spent the time, I mean, you know, we turned in reports that were about this thick, because he not only listed all of the conditions that need adjustment, he cited the handbook that clearly supported the position of the town of Dayton. As Mr. Hull said, we're not finished yet, hopefully we're gonna get this resolved, but the work he did in preparation for the June meeting led us to a continuance, because our initial visit in May, it sounded like it was all gonna get resolved at the June meeting, and then when they saw the kind of work that had presented, and the other, the developers, I'll call him the engineer, looked at what our individual had put together, that's when he also said we need a continuance, because he was not prepared to deal with all the work and the factual data that had been collected to support the town's position. So I certainly agree with what Mr. Hull has said, and as I said, I did speak to the individual and say, I need you to do that. I don't care how many hours you put in. I don't want to hear about 3 hours stormwater. I need you to do it, and he did it. So I would certainly agree with the board with what you're proposing.
And again, I'm gonna support this, because at the end of the day, I know this individual did have in fact a vacation plan. They did make a good faith effort to use their time. And because of extenuating circumstance related to their role, and some where they had to go above and beyond, they couldn't use it. And I think that someone shouldn't be penalized for being a good employee, so I'm gonna support it.
Is there any further discussion?
No.
If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, abstention, the ayes have it. Next item on the new business is to appoint Mary Hathaway to Capital Outlay Committee with an expiration date of June 30th, 2026.
Mr. Chairman, I motion that we appoint Mary Hathaway to the Capital Outlay Committee for a 5-year term expiring June 30th of 2026, effective.
July 14th.
It really should be July 1st, but July 14th, 2021.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? If
Yes,
not-
this is another one of those that are from the bylaw.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
it has to be on
By name, yes. I'm sorry, by resolution.
it, by title, yeah.
Yeah, she can't retire either.
Correct, that is
Yeah,
correct.
so-
That is absolutely binding.
Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, the ayes have it. The next item on the new business is to appoint Rita Santos as the town historian. I guess we missed her on the.
How did we miss her?
You know, there's a few of us that sort of listen, I didn't.
Okay, well, good catch.
Yes. whoever-
Did she bring this to our attention? Tell me the truth. Did you
I don't know.
catch her or did she?
I can't, no, I don't want to take any credit for this, I'm glad somebody caught it.
Me too.
I'm not sure if she was the one that caught it, but someone caught it. And this is for a 1 year term, June 30, 2022.
Mr. Chairman, if you're entertaining motions, I motion that we appoint Werner Santos as our town historian for a 1 year term expiring June 30th, 2022.
For a second,
Second?
any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, the ayes have it. The next item is that we received a letter from our town clerk, Mark Pacheco, and it's dated June 30th, regarding board and committee appointments. As the new town clerk, I see everything very fresh, as most things are new to me. I question everything, therefore have many ideas. As you know, right now is appointment time for board and committees. And I recently investigated yearly selectmen appointment terms. My office has a small part of this process, including swearing all newly appointed board and committee members, as well as provide them with the open meeting law, conflict of interest training, and accept resignations. I thought it would be nice to have all the appointments last 2 years. It may be nice to sell for working individuals only have to be sworn in once every 2 years. There's less time out of office and for them as opposed to coming in each year. It will also save resources, less mailing, less paperwork, and less time in your meetings discussing appointments. Many towns do 3 year terms. I like 2 years as I believe it's less of a time for individuals. Too long to commit. Other than specific entities, Council on Aging, Capital Outlay Committee, Community Preservation Committees, I do not see terms specified in the bylaws. I am simply asking this as an agenda and spoken about for implementation in the future should it be an idea you also like. If it is not something you think is feasible, I am happy. If it is not something you think is feasible, I am happy to discuss it. To aid in the background, I reached out to other surrounding clerks to learn what they do. I have included many letters as evidence of their employment. So my comment about this, and I've spoken to the town clerk about this, is that if we do 2 year appointments, then every 2 years we're going to have a whole list to do again. I suggested that we do for the next June when we do appointments, maybe half of them for 2 years, half of them for 1 year, and then after that, everybody will be on a 2 year cycle. Otherwise, every 2 years, we're gonna have that one meeting that we have. He's gonna have the same problem with swearing in 200 residents or about 200 residents, different boards and committees. So what's the authority of the board?
I totally understand what you're saying, but I think what he's trying, and I don't, I trust your conversation, Pacheco to Pacheco, was productive.
We're brothers, but
I think what he's trying to say is, yes, you'll never get away from having that long list, but it's just better to do it. Let me back up. It's like, do you remember when you joined the board, were we still having the weekly meetings?
Yes.
Yeah.
And shortly after that, and we all had our individual desks, if you remember that one too.
Absolutely. And our rationale for that, thankfully, that came from our executive team who said, we're like always, and it came from town administrator Ernestine as well. She said, yeah, I'm watching us. We're always in a meeting cycle. We don't have time to do anything else because there's a meeting every week. And I think what he's trying to convey is he's always in an appointment cycle. So he's just saying, if we do it 2 years, you're never gonna have that list be shorter because we have these positions and they're, normally you create more, you don't, eliminate that many. But he's just saying, at least you kind of defray it, so it's every other year that you have to do that burdensome
Also
task.
could get confusing if you stagger it.
That's the other thing. Look what happened with the Agricultural Commission. It gets confusing because the way that bylaw was written, it staggers it in the actual bylaw by position. And so, yeah, it's tough to keep track of. I agree with him that what I agree with the town clerk is it has to be like everyone is this. Everyone is 2 years. Because we'll easily lose track of someone that's on like an off year. It's very tough to keep track of that. It really is. But I do get what you're saying. I think we just need to make a decision.
Yeah, everybody would eventually be on 2 years. It's just that for next year, we would appoint half for 2 years and after 1 year, and after that, when those 1 year come up, we'd be appointed up for 2 years. But it doesn't,
How would we even do this now, though? I feel like, can we ask him to come in? Is that possible? And he can really, or maybe you spoke to him. What did he say? We already appointed people for 1 year.
Yeah, so that would stay the same, so next June,
Oh,
when
okay.
we all get together, we would be appointing all those 200 people that are appointed for 2 years.
It's for next year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we're not.
I think it's a good idea, because if someone doesn't like wanna do the full 2 years, you know, people move all the time and have to resign. I mean, you're not gonna hold up your life because you're, no offense, an open space committee member and you have this 2-year appointment, you're gonna resign, you know, it is what it is. But I think it does save a little bit of time in terms of the work.
You know, he's,
And chasing people to get sworn in, I think is a lot of work too.
I think this concept is a great idea. He's looking at the big picture, you know, how his workers have to, you know, how hard they have to work and everything else, and this is gonna ease some of the burden based upon that. I think it's great that he focused on attention.
Absolutely. Is he asking us to,
I think he wants us to take some action on it.
does he?
Well, it's on here to review, discuss, and act. He's asking for us to consider it, doesn't mean we have to do it tonight, but since we're here and we've had our conversation, it would be nice just to probably wrap this up so that, 2 weeks from now, we don't have to put on the agenda again, maybe we'll have to start meeting weekly again, just to have some of this stuff. So,
Let's get it done, I support it. I do actually support it, I think it's a good idea, I think he did exactly what I did when I was elected selectman. You remember, I took notes, I talked to people who knew more than me and I learned, and I think he's doing the same thing, he's just like observing the operations. Hey, how can we make things more sound and you know, I think that's great, he's streamlining things. So I'm gonna support this, Mr. Chairman.
so I will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve, I guess, the town clerk's request to have the following, to have all committees except for Council on Aging, Capital Outlay Committee, Community Preservation Committee, and the Agricultural Commission follow a 2-year appointment term, starting in July of 2020.
July 1st,
2022?
Yes.
Okay, that is my motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, the ayes have it.
I think we still have to, we're still gonna have to go through that list and to like appoint them for 2 years, just.
Yeah, in June, and then after that, it's going to be 2 years out.
Thank you, Mr. Pacheco.
You're welcome. The next item is it's from Highway Supervisor John Perry, dated June 24th, 2021, regarding a donation to the Highway Department. To the Board of Selectmen, please be advised that we will offer a wood planer regarding Holbrook High School from their surplus. We would like to add this item to our arsenal for our carpentry use. If you have any questions, please let me know. I was kind of hoping he would be here, because I wanted to know if this was an electric planer. I have a collection of hand planers, 18th, 19th century hand planers, and some 20th century. I suspect it's going to be electric planers. So, do we need to vote on this to accept it, Mr. Administrator, Town Administrator?
Yeah, I would vote to accept
It's
Mr.
equipment.
Chairman.
I see you shaking. I always see you when you're not here on my shoulder, like guiding me which way is the right way. Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the donation from the Dayton Holbrook Regional High School of a wood planer to be procured by the Highway Department.
Second.
For a second. I just want to add, as we know, the Highway Department's done a lot of great work in this building here, downstairs and next door. And this is probably going to help them through some of their work. So. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, abstention, the ayes have it. There you go, Mr. President.
Good work.
The next item is to review, discuss, and act on Board of Health transfer request. The Board of Health is requesting a transfer of $160 from the professional and technical to the Board of Health landfill trash. Bulky, what it says. $160, and the cost of equipment exceeded our estimate. This is signed by Mr. Potter, Tom Piles, as well as our assistant town accountant. I will entertain a motion for this transfer.
Mr. Chairman, I motion that we approve the end of year budget transfer request form from the Board of Health from in the amount of $160 from the account ending 5300 into the account ending 5302 as listed on the form.
For a second.
I second.
Any discussion?
Yes.
You go first.
Last night, we voted on several transfers, or at least FinCom voted on several transfers. This wasn't included in the list?
This was included, but the only thing, so the FinCom on this one became, because it came after the June 23rd meeting, the FinCom actually voted first.
Okay.
Now it's coming to the Board of
So
Selectmen.
it has been approved by.
It has been approved, so we're all done with transfers, and we met the deadline, actually July 15th to have all of our transfers done.
You had a question?
It's not a question, I just wanted to highlight and thank the Board of Health. I think they did an excellent job this year anticipating increases to trash, pickup, recycling. I know we had a big, we couldn't avoid it last year, but we had a big year-end transfer for that, and I think they did a superb job in anticipating the increase in those costs this year. We didn't have any of those big transfers to consider before, so I did want to give them a big kudos on that.
Any discussion? Further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, the ayes have it. Correspondence. We received a letter dated July 1st, 2021, dear Mr. Chief of Officer's Office and Mr. Hull. Please accept my resignation from the Cannabis Policy Advisory Committee effective immediately. My work schedule and professional obligations do not provide me with the adequate time to participate in any evening meetings. Moving forward, I hope the town of Dayton capitalizes on expanding legal cannabis industry. Regards, Kathy Spencer. I know that when I was on that commission, she was very helpful and very knowledgeable on that commission, so she's going to be Sarah Gross. I know that you are one of the Selectmen's representative for that task force also, and I'm sure you're going to listen to her.
Absolutely. Still know where she lives though.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, if you're entertaining motions, I motion that we accept with thanks and appreciation the resignation, letter of Kathleen Spencer from the Cannabis Policy Advisory Board.
Is there a second?
Second?
Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, the ayes have it. Also on the correspondence, we received a letter from Boston Tavares, from Jonathan McKenna. I spoke to Jonathan a few weeks ago about the likelihood I will need to resign from the commission because of the upcoming workload the library will be facing. I'm so sorry it is happening at a time when another member also needs to step away. I thought the cleanest way to do this was to resign on June 30th. I appreciate the opportunity I was given to serve the commission, and I learned so much this past year. I know my education, the disability rights, needs, and responsibilities only began when I worked with Jansen to be an ally and an advocate. Please let me know if there's anything I can do to help continue or support the work of the commission and Jocelyn Tavares will have to be at Dayton Library. So we're going to miss her. I've been on the commission since it was as a liaison to the board of selectmen since day one. She's been very helpful. She was the person responsible for our minutes, but she's also very helpful on other things she worked on the mail that we're going to be mailing out soon. So she will be missed. We are short a couple of members, so if anybody's interested in joining the Commission on Disability, we definitely would appreciate it.
Do you still have a form?
That's a good question. I think we do.
It's still three there.
Did we already highlight them? Have they been in the spotlight? We may want to do that next. So you can get some more members.
We have a meeting tomorrow night, and I will mention that.
Now,
Thank you.
I think we have some questions in regards to this position, or this board. 5-member board?
Is it a 5-member or 7-member?
I think it's 7. This,
I think it could be 7.
I
I'm
think it is.
not a voting member, but I kind of think it's 7.
So how many have they done?
We've done a few,
I'll look online on Selectmen policy.
I would say we got 3 members.
Yeah, that's my,
I think
yeah,
I've
okay,
done
the
three.
chairman is Jonathan, there's Ms. Mello,
Ms. Mello,
and there's Mr. Smith.
So we down to 3,
done with 3.
so you need one more.
At least one more, so I know, I looked at the agenda trying to think of, well, we won't be able to vote on minutes or anything else, quite frankly, but a lot of the times we have discussions, so we'll be able still to meet tomorrow night and have discussions, but we won't be able to vote.
Yeah,
Could we post that
it's
on
5 members.
the side?
It's fine.
It's 5 plus you as the liaison.
Oh, good.
That's, so we have
So you have 3, so you do.
You barely have a quorum, just like the open space committee.
a lot of
tough when
committees that
people
I
get
came
sick.
down to,
Yeah,
just the.
Could we, post that on the webpage?
absolutely.
And we try to,
We can highlight especially the ones that barely have a quorum. Because if someone catches a cold and
right,
you can't have a meeting for a month, you know, it's tough, it really is.
or if you have important business, you got to get done.
Yep.
Maybe on a monthly basis, we want to post on the website, Facebook page,
Mhm.
the list of those committees that are short members and kind of the method as to how they can join those commissions and
Yep.
committees. That might be helpful. I'm not saying we do it all the time, but just on a monthly basis, and we'll update it each month. I know we used to read those, the list, if you remember, they were very long. That's why I think we got away from that, but we used to read the list. I'm not sure if you were already on the board. We
Yes.
used to read the list of the different committees and the number of members that they need. We may have to do that in the future, but maybe just on the social media page as well as the website, we should find out the different committees and the number of members that they need, they're seeking.
Or at least under announcements, we could just mention like where someone will go on the webpage to see where the vacancies are. Because right on that page, you can click to apply, it's all electronic, very easy. And just guide people to where they can see what's available, and they'll know to click and apply if it's something that piques their interest.
So Carol, so maybe on the next meeting on the 28th, we can put that on the agenda, and Dr. Z will, since he's the website expert, he can give.
I'll get you like the
public
like,
information.
yeah, exact, the directory on like where you click to get to where the vacancies are, so people will know. And then we can just paste it we can just have it there forever.
And people can also come into the Board of Selectmen's office and fill out an application too.
And that's on the website as well, it lets people know.
Just as those that aren't internet savvy.
Thank you, a couple of questions.
Sure.
Mr. Mullin,
Yes,
regarding the ADA commission, they're a commission, correct, not a committee?
the Commission on Disabilities,
Yes.
yes.
So are any of their actions such that will affect developers or businesses that are trying to come into the town or get approval through the permitting process? Or is that mostly Jonathan?
They're mostly a recommending
Yeah.
body, so please know when I answer you nuanced, I'm not being skirting the issue. Can their recommendations have something to do with development? Yes, of course, because they'll make recommendations on things like engineering plans for different projects, and like maybe we should put this here. Do they have a direct effect on whether something gets a permit or not? No, they don't. But, I'll give you an example. If something wasn't built to code and, the COD goes there, or Mr. Gale in his capacity as the COD coordinator goes there and says, this isn't disabled accessible, maybe the building commissioner won't grant the permit. But it's not, so I'm trying to say, it's not their job to say no, but, if you have that partnership between the COD and the building inspector, which is all what we hope to have, that I would think they would coordinate, and have that professional relationship to inform each other of those types of things. Although Jim is also, in his own right, an expert as well.
So yeah, but you're talking about the ADA coordinator position interacting with the building commission, not the committee per se, the committee.
Well, no, the ADA interacting with the commission. When Jonathan has a problem with something, does he address it individually, or does he give it to the commission and then the commission makes
That's a
it?
Ken question.
Yeah, I think he acts on it individually, but he would probably bring it to the commission with disability. For example, we're talking about a module for the library. I'm sure he's gonna get to look at it and make sure that the ramp is appropriate and the bathroom is handicap accessible and that kind of stuff. If there's a problem with it, he may bring it back to the commission, but I'm sure before he even brings it back to the commission, he's gonna be contacting other people regarding that, so.
So he can act individually or with the commission?
Yes, he can't cease and desist and that kind of stuff, but he can have strong recommendations as to what needs to be done. I mean, he's minimum ADA compliancy, and then he's the better ADA compliancy, so we're, in this town, we're trying to do what's better for the residents. But for example, we don't have an elevator at the old, at Town Hall. We should have an elevator at Town Hall, because there are people that need to go from the basement or the first floor to the second floor. We do take into consideration if somebody has, and I've done it myself, I've gone down to the basement, the first floor, they get somebody's tax bill, they bring it up to the second floor, but they shouldn't have to go through that. So we're complying with everything, but we should do better than that. And the elevator's a little bit down the road, but we need to see grants and that kind of stuff.
I also wanted to, and I don't know if this answers your question, Selectman Paul, but just like the Development and Industrial Commission is something that's created by state Massachusetts general law, I believe the ADA Commission also is something that falls under specific state guidelines, and so their role is outlined in that way. But also ADA coordinator, Mr. Gale, in his role as ADA coordinator, I believe also has certain I don't want to say rights, but like duties and responsibilities under Mass General Law and different titles and all that, so.
Thank you for the heads up about the IDC too.
Absolutely. And I will get you the information on which general law. Miss Vicky Piazza, when she was the chair, brought it to my attention. And it outlines exactly the roles and responsibilities, so it's like very clear what the commission's charge is.
Thank you.
Okay, any acknowledgements? Let's say no.
Just Mrs. Brady for being
Do
patient.
we have to, did we vote on her?
Did we?
I do
Joshua
have
and
it,
Sue.
yes,
Resignation? We did vote?
I do have it.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for bringing it to
With
my
thanks and
attention, 'cause I don't
appreciation.
remember whether or not.
I don't think you did roll call.
Oh, we didn't?
I don't think so.
Just a roll call.
We didn't vote on Jocelyn?
I think it was motioned and seconded.
No,
I think that was the
motion and
one
seconded.
longest
That's a discussion. We didn't officially vote.
Disability. Oh, okay. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, abstention, the ayes have it. Minutes, I'll entertain a motion to accept for review the Board of Selectmen's regular meeting minutes of May 12th, 2021, June 16th, 2021, and June 23rd, 2021.
So moved.
Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Opposed, abstention, the ayes have it. I'll entertain a motion to approve the Board of Selectmen's regular meeting minutes of June 9th, 2021.
So moved.
The second.
Second?
Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstention, the ayes have it. Approval of the warrants. I believe we have the warrants.
Ooh, the changing of the guard, I love it.
It's a little late, so we have to do something.
On June 30th, 21, warrant 53A-21, $107,899.21. Warrant 53B-21, $79,351.54. Warrant Article 53C-21, $9,247.98. June 30th, 2021. Item 54A-21, $79,401.24. Item 54B-21, $127,309.71. On July 7th, 2021, item 1A-22, $34,402.18. Item 1B-22, $149,165.61. On July 14th, 2021, Article 2A-21, $100,133.01. Item 2B-22, $22,924.99. Item 2C-22, $925,741.26. Also on July 14th, 2021, item 55B-21, $119,937.55.
Is there a second?
Second.
Just want to mention July 14th, Storm of the Bastille, so you must be familiar with that at the time of plans. Any discussion on this? If not, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, the ayes have it. Do we have any public input from anybody? I'm not sure if there's anybody now.
That's us.
There's nobody in the corner over there?
Did we get any emails or calls or anything?
I have no emails.
Oh.
Or call.
Good. Good work.
I will entertain a motion to go into executive session under Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 38, Section 21A-37, to discuss the strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation within an open meeting may have detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body, and the chair so declares, and I so declare. A, negotiations with Dayton Police Officers, Mass. COP 306. B, request of bargain Dayton Highway Act, Local 1701. And C, discussion of June 15th. To comply with the provisions of any general or special law of federal presenting aid requirements, generally privacy, and also to accept for review the minutes of the Board of Selectmen's executive session minutes of January 25th, 2021. And we will not be reconvening.
So moved.
Second.
I'll ask for a roll call.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Good night.
I love this.
Almost.
These chargers. Because I'm so sorry. I was gonna do the whole meeting from home, because I'm like, I literally got home 5 minutes before 6 p.m. It's 5:55. And this thing was dead. So like I, finally got it on, so I took everything. I'm like, I want to be like actually in person. Especially because Janelle was gonna be there.
The 2 terms that you guys are talking about, Christian today was probably saying 2 years.
Yeah.
I remember when
He's
she
writing his resignation right now.
volunteer, and she told me there was 1 meeting a year, and now they're 2 years.
Now I got 2 guaranteed meetings I gotta go to. I'm writing a resignation letter. Nancy, it's nice seeing you. Have a good night, Nancy.
I'm gonna get up early to get to the bakery.
I was just gonna say, we get to have breakfast tomorrow.
Do we know what the cost is for everybody?
Yeah, I was just gonna ask, was
It
it like
was,
80, 50?
it was $12 a person.
That's
But what is it each person, I think
That's
it's
Well, is Nancy? I don't know if Nancy.
Do you turn over to executive or do you
Wait,
leave
it
it
was
on?
way more expensive last year.
I just don't want anyone to hop into it.
You don't want Woody listening on you.
Oh,
Yeah, no,
each
shit that
person
she
pays
hates.
120. Oh, that makes sense. I thought what you were saying is 120, so I go, how are we?
I'm showing you two for this actually.